Hello, everybody! I'm Meso.
And I'm LJ.
And streaming to you live from Golden Beach, this is Knack and Jay. Guess who's back? Back again.
Oh, gosh.
Meso Knack. Tell a friend. Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's Knack?
Yeah,
Guess
there
who's
it is.
Knack? Guess who's back? Guess who's Knack? Guess who's Knack? Banana.
You're way too excited for this.
I'm happy to be here.
No.
I'm happy to vibe.
Well,
We've got a nice vibe sesh up in here.
do we?
One might say. Yes.
Okay.
It's been a minute for a variety of reasons.
Oh, yeah, it is.
But I am glad to be here. I have missed the low key Knack and Jays. How are you doing, LJ?
I'm tired, dude. I'm very tired.
Understandable. Did you get any sleep last night?
No, I got sleep. That's not the tired I'm talking about. I am
Fair enough.
mentally exhausted.
Yeah, it's understandable. Well, do we want to just hop right in, cut the preamble? You know, like we got a long one today.
I guess I would just ask everyone, like, how does it sound?
Yes. It is the first time in a while for LG in particular. Just let us know how the feedback is. You know, how the sound quality is. You know, just let us know how it sounds.
Mm-hmm. So,
I'm not seeing anyone saying it sounds horrible.
yeah, and I think both of us can be heard and we're of equal audio. And that's really what I'm
Then
worried about.
Then I consider this an absolute win.
Okay. Fair enough.
So here's how we're gonna do this. I'm gonna set a little primer, so we'll know what to expect, and then we're gonna kind of jump right into it. But before we do that, LJ, would you mind giving us those sick plugs?
Oh, geez, I don't even know if I remember how to do it.
That's fair.
All right. If you enjoyed the conversation and discussion and want to be a part of it, head on over to the TTV message boards at board.ttvchannel.com. You need to be 13 years or older, read our terms of service, and agree to it, and follow the rules, and you'll have a good time. Also, if you're interested in supporting the channel, head on over to TTV message the TTV Patreon at patreon.com/TTVchannel. Lowest dollar a month, you can join our TTV Patreon Discord server. You can also get access to our Minecraft server on the island of Matanui and Voyanui, with hopefully, eventually, in the future, more to come. And if you're interested in following us on Twitter, head on over to @TheTTVchannel, @Messanak, and @TheLJJohnson. That's JOHNSEN.
Can we make Chima on the server?
No.
I think Mount Kavora would be pretty cool.
To blow up? Yes. I agree.
I think it'd be a good idea. Okay, so here's the deal, everybody. Today's episode, surprising no one, who are here to hear it, we'll be discussing the Toa Hagah Canon contests, which have thankfully recently concluded. They are at an end. We have announced the winners of all of the, the mock portion, the art portion. All of it's done. All of it's been approved by Greg to be canon. LJ, would you like to announce the winners for anyone who doesn't already know, which I'm sure is no one?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Just to kind of solidify.
for the mock portion, the winners, for Bomanga, it is the underscored double. For Pooks, it's Kodiak. For Koalas, it's subpar Faux and
Faux
for
pas.
Gaki, it's Doni. Those are the basis inspiration models for the Toa Hagah. The winner and the canon iteration for the Hagah, which you see on screen now, was created and canonized. It is Spectre L.
Yes. So congratulations to everyone. You've been part of quite a long journey. I know there was a lot of reservations about the concept of a Hagah Canon contest, and we'll surely be talking about some of those. But I am quite happy to say that all of the entries and all of the finalists, like, there was a really good turnout. There was lots of creative and cool pieces of art and mocks that were entered, and I'm very pleased with the winners. Not all of them were my choice. Later on we'll reveal like our favorites, which we always keep tight-lipped during the actual run of the contest. But I can say that I'm very pleased with all the winners, especially how they look in a group.
Yeah.
I'm very, very happy with them.
I think that all in all, the community did a remarkable job with how they did this, how they voted on everything. Because, and I've been seeing this all over the place, people are really, really satisfied with the outcome. Like, these are probably the most popular end results for the Canon contests. They really like how the Hagah are all distinct, but they still very clearly look to be a part of a team. Like, they definitely look...
I've definitely heard a lot less derision towards the winners of these than I did to Pelrix or Artaka. People loved those, but there was a contingent of people who, didn't.
Yeah.
It took me a while to warm up to the winning Helrix because I didn't like the mask, but I eventually did.
I really like the mask.
I'm very happy. I'm very happy with the reception, and I'm glad for that, because at the end of the day, when I see the results and I see all the creativity, and when I look at them as a unit and I see like collectively, okay, sweet, this is the end result, it feels nice. It feels good. It feels good to see. So that's basically, the happy part. Here's the thing. We're going to be talking about a lot more than just the winners of the contest. I'm sure we'll cycle around to the entries eventually, but the purpose of this podcast, for those of you who are new, or for those of you who haven't listened to a Knack and Jay in a while, which I couldn't blame you for, considering there hasn't been a Knack and Jay in a while, is, there's an expectation from us, and it's not entirely unjustified, considering our stance as, community figures, that anything we say, anything we do, anything we produce, anything we put out there should be, like, fair and impartial and on an even keel and professional, and we should hold ourselves to a picturesque, pinnacle standard of the community, and we should never get heated, and we should never speak our mind, and we should never be emotional, and we should never say anything. And if we didn't have the channel as a platform, and if the channel wasn't our main platform, I'd be inclined to agree. But it is, and we do. And so you get to deal with our opinions, and you get to deal with us as people having an honest cadence. It's why in the past, sometimes you've said things that ruffled feathers stuff, and I'm like, tough. I'm sorry. I don't go out of my way to be overtly rude to anybody. I try to treat people with respect. And even when discussing things that I have a personal investment or a stake in, I try to be fair and, try to look at the other side. I know you're the same way. But at the end of the day, we are people, and we do have opinions on things. And I view the Knack and Jays as like, okay, after, 6 to 8 months of keeping it all in, now we can finally just talk about our thoughts on how things went down. And you can expect that today.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
If you are not looking for that kind of content, if you would rather see curated, PR statements, or see things completely impartially, neutrally or whatever, you might not be interested in listening to today's show, and that's totally chill. I completely respect that. Just as a primer, you'll be dealing with us today, not Meso and Eljay, the BIONICLE community heads, quote unquote, part of the heads of the community, but Meso and Eljay, the BIONICLE fans, the people, and the outspoken people. So that'll be today. Eljay, would you like to give us a recap of the last month to kind of set the stage on how we got here in the recent terms?
Yeah, so this started way, way before the actual contest started. Let me find exactly when, because we've been talking about the Hagah contest for a while. It's been in the works, of course. And Gosh, let me find that initial topic. I make a lot of topics. So things really. The initial poll, or maybe you made the topic. It was
if you're talking about the format feedback topic,
the format.
I did make that in March.
The format feedback and whether or not we should mandate metru builds.
Yes.
Because
yeah, that was March 9th.
Okay, March 9th is when this kicked off. And the topic was opened to garner feedback after how the prior two contests went, and to just kind of figure out, all right, how are people feeling? What are people thinking? What would everyone like to see next? How would they like it accomplished? So, March 9th, a couple of questions were proposed to the community. There was a poll. How would you like the Hagah contest to be run? Would you like it exactly as normal? A mock contest first to decide the design of the characters, with a follow-up art contest to create the featured art. An art contest only. Mocking portion would be completely disregarded and it would only be art. Or a free-for-all where mocks and art will compete against each other. Now, we had that up for, oh heavens, how long? So it was from the 9th to the 17th, and the topic received 1,701 replies. In the poll, we got 243 votes. Now, this poll was not binding.
Nope.
This was not a binding poll, and I guess that got lost in translation because people thought, oh, you're gonna follow what the winning option is, which was not the case. It was a non-binding poll. We were garnering feedback and discussion to try and see what people were thinking, and help use that to help inform our decision. And the winning option was exactly as normal. It was to just run a mock contest first and then do art after. But what we ended up going with was a free-for-all. The logic being, this isn't a mock contest. This is a visual design contest. It's to determine the best visual appearance of these characters. And that can be done in any medium. So that ended up being the decision that we went for.
In hindsight, because we made it pretty clear it was a non-binding survey, but I think it was still confusing. If I could do that over, I would have just said, would you be okay with a free-for-all, yes or no? Because what I was looking for in that data was free-for-all the last preferred option. You know what I mean? If it was just super unpopular and nobody voted for it, then I'd be like, okay, maybe we shouldn't do it. But it was second place. People still wanted mock representation. They didn't want art only contest. And so then the decision was just how to do it. And he puts it very well. The decision to do a free for all was because we knew going in we were going to have a conversation about the builds. And we later did, and we're going to get to that. But knowing how the Toa Hagah were built, being metru builds, to maintain some kind of cohesion between the rest of them, Norik and Aruni, it really didn't matter which form of art they were depicted in. Because at the end of the day, we're not looking for anything to break the template of what a Toa is. We're looking for something that looks relatively Toa-esque, can work within a lineup, but has personality, has individuality, has some cool elements to them, and that could be achieved in art or mock. And we strongly felt that was the best decision. Now, a common sentiment that was proposed at the time was, hey, why are you going to make artists compete against mockists? I think people ironically said either side of the issue. good art is going to beat a mock every time. Because people can just draw whatever. You've seen the drawings that people make in the Bionicle community. They're outstanding. Why would anyone vote for a metru build, regular old Toa construction when they could vote for an elaborate, detailed painting? And then we also had people on the flip side who argued the opposite. People want to see the sets built. They want to have a mock representation to put on their shelves. They want to have a design framework. Of course, people are going to vote for mockists. The mockists outnumber the artists because it's an easier medium. Why would you make them compete against each other? So people were vehemently arguing these two disparate points. And I just kind of looked at them and I was like, so you're just validating that it's a good idea. You know what I mean? Because if you have people on either side that feel this strongly, in reality, they're going to meet in the middle. It's not as unilateral as either side believes it is because the other side exists.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a battle of the merits of the entries, which is exactly what we ended up seeing. Yes, mockists did end up winning, but it was pretty close.
Yeah,
isn't that? It was pretty close. There was some good art pieces that came very close to winning, but clearly they didn't, because ultimately the mocks won out because of the strength and clarity of the designs. And I think that was cool to see. And I like that the mediums were able to battle it out and have people decide, what's the best look for the characters.
Yep.
I do want to touch on something while we're on this format topic. And that's why it exists, because we didn't do it for the other contests. We just kind of started them, and we had a discussion topic where people could ask questions and propose things. But these almost like deliberation topics, these open forum sessions with thousands and thousands of replies, they went on for months. Like, I made multiple. I think the last one I made, we closed it in end of May. Oh no, middle of May 14th. So we had 2 months, slightly more than, of just open forum deliberation on what the Hagah contests were going to be like, what their rules were going to be like, what rules did people not like in the other contests, what rules would they want to change, what rules could do with some clarity. And they were primarily managed by me. Not that you didn't post, but you and I would sit in calls till 3 a.m. and I'd just write these mega replies addressing everything people had said throughout the day, us going through 400 post intervals.
Mm-hmm.
And this was done tactically for a reason. Because you've kind of taken the brunt of a lot of stuff with the other contests.
Yeah.
As a result of how we've run them.
And this one was no exception, wonderfully. So, hang on.
Yeah,
you
were
put a pin in that comment for later. So, yeah, essentially what I have. So I did a lot of managing of the contest, the day-to-day, and obviously when you make certain decisions, or make certain requests to have people do things, then they don't like the enforcer. They question everything.
You were basically the person who was posting everything, breaking every piece of news, good or bad.
Yeah. So it got very stressful. It definitely allowed for people to have a target or someone to vent their frustrations or their blame on. It was very, very, very detrimental.
I think people somehow were laboring under the delusion that you're some kind of dictator who posts stuff unilaterally, but nothing you would do wasn't cleared with me first.
The literal,
it's not we didn't talk about it.
I think the literal only sole decision that I've made during all of this has been allowing Hosrix to go through.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah. I feel like that was the only thing that I did on my own, and obviously that was a mistake.
Yeah. Now, let's be clear. It's not like there's a big council of people in TTV that decides the things. It's basically just a me and LJ show with a third person being an exception to that, who we'll get into later. But for the most part, it's me and LJ. And, he gets a lot of flack for like what he does and stuff, but it's not like I don't sign off on it too. But because we made posts from the LJ account instead of like a formal, TTV account, or like a Pandemic Panda account or whatever, people start to bag on you for it.
Yeah.
And it was not a good look. So I was like, hey, look, I'm a part of this too. A lot of unpopular rules, a lot of unpopular things. Let's have these topics to try to get to the bottom of it. And, the purpose wasn't, hey, what should we change? Let's do mob rule. Let's, have polls for every single divisive issue. Let's get everything hashed out. Let's change everything. That was never going to happen. But the purpose of the contest, the purpose of the topics was to be like, okay, you guys had a lot of issues during Artaka with how things went down.
You had a handful of issues with Artaka. Artaka has gone the easiest.
Yeah, that's fair.
Handful of issues with Artaka, a lot of issues with Hellrix.
Yeah, there were rule issues people had. Stuff like our policies against, dual painting of pieces.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big controversial one with Gonal. No, it wasn't Gonal. Who was it? What was his name? It wasn't Gonal.
Unfortunately, it escapes me.
Geru! It was Geru. Sorry, Gonal. You didn't do anything.
We dealt with you recently. You came to mind.
Yeah, it was the Marcus Geru, who had entered as Artaka and had like the dual painted mask and the bin tin torsos and whatever. There were issues that people were like, hey, this could be worded a bit better. But we weren't going to change the wording or change our enforcement of the wording midway through the Artaka contest. That just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
But we were fine with doing it in the middle, and we did it. I don't remember exactly every single thing we changed as a result of the topic, but I did make a number of posts in it. LJ did as well. We at least tried to give the reasons behind our decisions, and at best, we made some changes to wording, made some clarifications, walked back certain rules when they were better alternatives were pointed out, or when people just were like, hey, this is unnecessary. And then, like Elj said, we used it as a way to gather feedback on the format. And that was really the purpose of the main topic. We revised a bunch of rules in that first one with 1,700 replies, and we decided what format the contests were going to be in. Then we made the second topic, and now we get into the fun part about metru builds and Canon accuracy, which was by no means full stop the biggest point of controversy with the rules in the entire contest.
Yeah.
And I get it. You want to give a primer?
So the issue ultimately became a matter of figuring out what the heck a metru build was, because let me get the quote real quick. It's not going to take me very long, from Greg. So
yeah.
Let me see.
Because what it all comes down to at the end of the day is Canon accuracy.
Exactly. So someone back in 2007, thanks, pal, decided to ask Greg, do all the Toa Hagah have the same type of body, metru styled? And Greg said yes. So over 13 years later, that quote came back.
Comes into play.
Because then everyone was like, all right, so the Toa Hagah have a metru-styled build. They have metru-style bodies. Okay, well, what does that mean? Because a lot of people are like, well, does that mean we can change the limbs? Does it just necessitate the torso piece? Does it just have to look like a Toa metru? Can we make custom builds that vaguely resemble Toa metru and use 1,500 parts when 3 will work? What's the upper echelon of what a Toa metru build is?
Mm-hmm.
And this was the most heavily contested and heavily debated part of all of this.
Full stop. Some good points and bad points made. You know, there were some really good perspectives and some that were less impressive. But like the crux overall, it boiled down to build freedom. It was like people, a contingent of people viewed restricting things to a metru template as too restrictive. They were like, well, at the end of the day, if you're going to allow mocks, and if you're not going to make it an art only contest, mockists should have the freedom to express themselves how they want. Being restricted to being too much like official Lego sets, at that point, why are you going to do the contest in the way you're going to do it? Because you're just going to have a bunch of recolors. And they were like, why don't you make it art only? Well, again, that comes back to the survey that we did. All in all, people didn't want mocks to be excluded.
Yeah.
Which overall, that does make sense. A lot of the community is mockists. People did not want there to be art only as an option.
Yeah.
Because then that would cut off the bulk of people. But it's trade-offs, right? At the end of the day, they are not building contests. They are not artwork contests. They are canon contests. That's the spirit of the free-for-all option. The medium doesn't matter. And if you cater to the medium individually too much, then you sacrifice the real point.
Yeah.
The most compelling exploration of a potential compromise was allowing builds that matched the metru in terms of aesthetics, but were custom. So you would restrict things like Inika builds with super wide shoulders, but you could still have customs so long as they didn't look too out of place. And the logic kind of was implicitly, if there are any grievous, dissimilarities, you would streamline that in the art portion. You could touch up whatever's mismatched. But the issue for us, and the reason why we didn't do it, is because it really came down to too much work for not enough reward. We were pitched something by community member Dag, who, to his credit, did a lot to sell the idea. He sent pictures, he sent like breakdowns, and we're like, here's an example of a custom torso that you could make that literally it matched the metru build in terms of dimensions. He measured it using like a Technic lift arm, and it did. It looked very similar to a metru build. Unfortunately, in showing the validity of such an idea, it also called into question why.
Yeah. It ultimately, and Dad got very upset when we kind of laughed at the concept.
Yeah.
Which was not a means. We weren't trying to like laugh at him. We just found the idea silly. And we still do. We still find the idea silly. It is a silly idea.
More or less.
His counter argument when we dismissed it, his argument was, well, you don't have a canon reason to disallow it. Which, as many community members have already made him aware, the canon reason is that it's not a metru build. It just straight up is not.
More or less.
And I have a custom version of the metru build, like a pre-made one on screen right now. I don't know if it's Dag's. I don't think that it is. But it's just an example, so I'm not claiming it's his. If it is, excellent. Yeah. If not, just a show. Yeah, like, it just straight up is not a metru build. Full stop. That's the canon reason. It's a neat torso. It's a cool mock. It accomplishes the goal of being a torso. But ultimately, it's not a suitable replacement for the literal pieces that we have been told are a prerequisite of a metru build, by means of it debuting with the metru and being used in the Hagah. And we can get into the meta reasons for why that is. Oh, they were just supposed to be Nadiki and Duma. They were just using pieces for 2 special edition Toa. It doesn't matter, ultimately. Because at the end of the day, they're just... It's a custom torso. It's moving the goalpost. It doesn't actually solve the problem. It is not a metru torso. And attaching metru limbs to it doesn't make it any more of a metru torso, because it's ultimately just not.
I mean, here, like, and this is where we diverge, because again, people always say, like, we're a hive mind. We don't have the same opinions on this. That doesn't matter to me personally. When I look at it, I don't see that, because to me, that's the kind of thing that could be smoothed out in the artwork portion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that could be redrawn, that could be stylized. My very personal view is, why bother? Like, the only practical purpose that I have seen in terms of having a non-standard metru build, aside from creativity for creativity's sake, is having articulated shoulders. You know, when people do that.
Which, even still, you can have that anyway.
And you do in the winning entries. I believe Doubles Bamanga does use the ball-jointed shoulder attachment while using a metru build. And when I see stuff like, you know, like Dag's custom torso, anything else, and I look at it and I see things that functionally are identical to metru builds, and aesthetically, I mean, what Dag was proposing, which was the best proposal, was to enforce a stud-based measurement system to check, like, you must measure your torso versus a Technic lift arm. At the end of the day, when it's functionally identical and it even matches the same dimensions, I'm like, what's the point, really, at the end of the day?
Yeah. It's also...
Sakota points out, you know, it can also help to attach other kinds of armor, for example. And that is true. Someone, for instance, wanted to use the Anika shoulders and was like, well, it looks kind of bad on a metru torso because there's a gap in the neck area. On this torso, it's more like form-fitting. And I guess that's true. I mean, I see that point. I get it. But at the end of the day, like, that armor can still be attached.
It can still be attached, and B, imagine for a moment, think if I wanted to recreate one of the Haga and it's using a custom torso, and the Anika shoulder armor looks really good on that torso, but I don't want to build the torso because it's like 20 pieces, and I just want to use a metru torso because canonically that would be what it is, and it doesn't look good on the metru torso, I'd feel kind of cheated. I feel like I'd be kind of misled because it didn't look good on the torso it's meant to be on. You know?
I get that.
That's not... I don't personally hold that opinion because I'm not a recreationist. I'm not going to build any of the Canon models. They're not They're not for characters that I want to have, I want to own. But that is how, if I were, I would feel about that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like I don't see the points. Like, the armor point, I might not fully jive, but, like, I get that. I get the logic behind that. And I mean, Dag's whole point was like, hey, this is for creativity. You know, we should have a way to allow creativity if we can, and so long as it vaguely looks like a metru, is that not okay? And we did seriously consider it. Like, I tossed around the potential, and I was like, should we do this? But I wasn't convinced by the merits. If you have to make it look like a metru build, and if it has to have the same measurements as a metru build, to the point where if you hold it side by side, the only thing setting it apart from a metru build is the internals, or, you know, slight gaps in armor. If there's no functional difference, that's a lot of work for nothing. That's a lot of work having to have people measure their torsos for nothing.
Yeah, because then we also
and that's just the stance we decided to take.
We also have to enforce that. We have to enforce those measurements, because then when you bring in custom torsos, it's like, all right, we have to make it fit certain criteria. We have to make sure it's not too long, too short, too wide. It just,
which I'm sure people would love.
Yeah. It adds an additional layer of complexity. And again, if you're looking for a canon reason, the torso you have designed is not the actual torso. That's it. That's the canon reason. If you make another torso, if you make a custom torso, it's inherently not a metru torso. And that's the end of the conversation.
More or less. And that is really the end of the conversation. It was a controversial point, but I think we decided on the best path. Plenty of people were supporting that, and we're like, no, you need to have this be canon. We don't want to have to build super intricate builds. We don't want to have to do all this stuff. It doesn't matter if the mocks aren't as, crazy complicated as they could be otherwise. This is a matter of theming. This is a contest for Toa metru style Toa. You should design your build around that theme, even if it's creatively limiting. This is the only contest it's going to be creatively limiting in, or at least like one of very few. And ultimately we agreed. And that's what we did. And I don't really regret it. I think it was a good decision. I'm very happy with how things ended up shaking out and with how much creativity there was on display. And all the entries. We saw some killer entries using the metru torso framework. I'll tell you that much. There were still some that pushed what that could really be. And they didn't end up winning because I think people erred on the side of, we want entries that look like they have parity next to Norik and Iruni. But there was some out there stuff that really proved like, hey, this isn't quite as limiting as I think people thought it was.
Yeah.
But that was it. That's what the second topic mostly consisted of. Like, we announced our stance on that. We actually gave a prototype version of the rules.
Yes.
And we were like, here's the guidelines. What do you think?
We opened that up on March 23rd, and after a little over 700 replies, we closed it on March 27th because there were a handful of questions that arose that people wanted us to put to Greg. They wanted us to ask.
That's where this was.
Huh?
I forgot that's where this took place.
So they had some questions that they wanted us to forward to Greg Farshti to get some clarity on some things before everything could be like hammered out. So once we closed the topic on the 27th, we went ahead and drafted a PM to Greg, an email to Greg, and we sent it off. And we waited. And waited. And waited. I think we ended up having to ask again, did we not?
We did, unfortunately.
We had to kind of remind him, because sometimes we'll send him an email and he doesn't reply because it gets swept up by other work emails because we're sending it to his work email.
Our timing is always quite poor because it always ends up being on a Friday or whatever. And he doesn't check until Monday, but by that point it's 4 days off, so we gotta send another one.
Yeah. And he got back to us and essentially said, so let me see here what you say. In the interest of full transparency, and so you guys know how things went down, we first emailed Greg back on March 25th with these questions. After a few prompting reminder emails, we heard back from him on April 8th, in which Greg essentially said that we were asking about stuff from 12 years ago, which wasn't exactly in the front of his mind, and that he'd need more time to review it. So,
would you like to talk about what these questions were?
Yes. So they were, not nothing questions by any means. They were asking about whether or not the Anika masks resembled their set counterparts, or if they had variations from the organic versions that we're familiar with. It was whether or not the Mari masks represented their set versions, or if they were different in some way because the Mari were aquatic themed. Heavy emphasis on these being the Saletu and the Volatak because they're the most egregious forms of they could be different. And I think there was one other question about regional variants.
Yes. I mean, that was basically just an attempt to explain the differences behind some masks, whether that would be a thing. There was another question, I think it was, we asked him, what was it? I think it was about Pooks, the Mask of Emulation.
I don't think we asked him about that. That one was fairly...
I did.
Oh, really?
I did forward that to him, yeah. Gonal specifically asked me to, and I was like, yeah, I'll include it, sure.
What was the question? I don't remember.
So the way Gonal puts it in his post here, which I sent to Greg, pretty much verbatim, he said, 4 years after the Hagah storyline was originally produced, a fan approached you with a question to clarify on the subject, asking, quote, do the rest of the Hagah have a mask of a different shape like Norik? To which you said simply, yes. This is the only quote on the subject, aside from one that followed up to confirm that you meant yes as an affirmative, and it's the source of the conflict. Many fans are interested in using the canonical shape of a mask of emulation on Pooks, but lore enthusiasts refer to this quote to insist that's impossible. He presents the pros, the cons, the reason why people take issue, namely that, number one, it's an unintentionally leading question. Number two, they ask about the rest of the Hagah, but it's unclear whether that meant all Hagah in existence or just Norik's team. And even if it's the latter, that's an issue because Iruni clearly did not have a mask of a different shape. And then the fact that the question was asked in 2009, and already in 2008, Greg had responded to a similar question, which asked if Norik's mask was modeled off Doom's Kyril, and he said that he really doesn't remember because the Hagah story was 3 years ago. So in short, he was like, there's reasonable doubt here. We should at least ask Greg. And I was like, fair enough. So I sent that as question 1. Question 2 about the Shelik and the Felnas and whether the Hagah would wear them. And then question 3, the unmutated Inika Mari regional variant, blah, blah, shtick.
Mm-hmm.
And, as I just want you to all keep in mind, these were questions people asked us to ask. They were questions that people felt like we needed answers to progress. They were questions about very serious things that, unironically, people wanted to know answers to. And they're questions that Greg was never going to answer.
No.
And we knew he wasn't going to answer them.
Yeah, because they're very, they're very detailed, complex lore questions that, of course, we know about and we care about and we have thoughts and opinions on, that he's just straight up hasn't had any interaction with, let alone thoughts and opinions on, for over a decade.
Even reading that out loud just then, in my mind, spun a little bit. I'm like, there's a lot to grasp.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And I mean, you could say the flip side and be like, but Greg's the writer. If anybody would know, it'd be him. And, that may have been true, 10 or even, 15 years ago. But, it's been a long time. He remembers big ticket stuff. But, these small things, for him to actually give an answer that wouldn't in and of itself be leading, depending on how the question or the thing was framed, which I tried to be as impartial as possible, he himself would have to go do research. He'd have to, refresh himself on the lore. He'd have to read it. He'd have to read BS01. He'd have to read the question base of the official Greg dialogue. I don't really think that was ever something that he was going to do, which is totally chill. He doesn't have to be. He doesn't have to do that. He's moved on. In his eyes, just my interpretation of his actions, not communicating his intent by any means, he probably views these contests as a pretty cool way to contribute hands off and just be like, does this work as, the appearance of a character?
Mm-hmm.
Yes or no? And it'll be like, thumbs up, which explains a lot of his replies. Very nice, very cool, looks stunning, looks great. People ask him, continue the story, write the story. What's Takanuva's destiny? What's the answer to this very specific thing? And all those details are so far in the rear view at this point. We were basically asking because otherwise people were going to be like, hey, well, you're not qualified to make a ruling on it.
Mm-hmm.
So we asked, and he was like, you're going to have to give me some time. And then we gave him some time, and he didn't reply. And, well, we're not going to bug the guy, so we just moved on.
Yeah, because ultimately, I think that your conclusion on this, Meso, was a really good, good message, because eventually, keep in mind, we sent that on March 25th, and we made this, you made this post on May 12th.
Oh God, really?
Mm-hmm.
So we gave it like a full month.
Let me see. Well, Wait, sorry. Well, April 25th to May 12th. It's almost a full month. It's about 3 weeks. But
Okay.
it's 3 weeks after prompting emails, after a whole bunch of stuff. It just wasn't going to happen. And I think that the way you kind of summarized everything was very good. It's like, we kind of have to do this ourselves, guys, to a certain degree. It's like, there's only so much Greg can do. There's only so much he can answer. And also, some of these are just things that we have answers for, and people are just trying to insinuate spins on them and sow in doubt so that they can do something that they want to do. It's pushing an agenda.
The biggest example of that to me is the thing of inorganic mask designs, because there is a clear cut piece of evidence, and we even quote the thing here. Greg straight up said, "quote an inorganic Sanok would just look like an organic Sanok, simply made out of metal rather than an organic substance."
Yeah, that is straight up, just pure factual confirmation. Yeah. The Unica masks look normal. They're just made out of flesh.
No, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not happy about that. That's not what I would choose personally. I think that is rather whack. As Dark Talk Nova states, I don't exactly have much interest in seeing a Canon scaly Sulitu inorganic form, but you know what? That's that.
Yeah, and also
we can't really argue it.
And as far as the Volatac, sorry folks, the Volatac has that little rebreather. It just does. It's not an add-on. It's. We have nothing to suggest it's an add-on. We have nothing to suggest it's new Paru specific. In fact, we have more to suggest that it's normal because Mazuka wears that, and he has nothing to do with aquatics, and it was also confirmed the Order of Matanui didn't attach it to him. We have quotes for these things. It's done. It's settled. It's not going anywhere. So, it's over.
So that doesn't rule out the fact that, there could potentially be regional variants, masks that could look slightly different, but the official format of them, for the purpose of this contest, for the purpose of anything else, the only thing that was going to be canonized, is the regular versions of the masks. Like, that's the only thing we could do.
Yeah.
And that was that. We pretty much moved on. We also had some other polls, which don't really need to be talked about quite as much, about stuff like the consent rules to change, which was another example of the productivity of the discussion topics, because people made really good, arguments. They were like, hey, so the artist shouldn't always be able to change the mask in the initial design. I think Toa Hagah made this point. He was like, people use those masks for a reason. People use those masks because they fit the character. And I get wanting the artist to have some personality and some input, but probably shouldn't always do that unilaterally, because it kind of steps on the creativity of the initial person. They made some good points. And we were like, you know what? I get that. We just wanted the artist to have a role in the creative process. We wanted them to be able to contribute a unique mask design. But I get your point too. So how about this? Allow for the creator to dictate whether they're okay with allowing their mask to be changed or not. We basically said, hey, anybody that enters, throw in a statement about whether they would like their mask changed, whether it's okay for the mask to change, rather, or whether they want it kept. And later on, we expanded that to include metallic colors and spear tips, just in the event that certain Haga won and had the same color or the same spear tip or whatever, and people wanted the ability to change that.
Yeah, an important.
I think that was a smashing success.
I agree, and I think that is best illustrated by the illustration, which shows a very unique color scheme for everyone. Everyone has their own specific metallic color. It definitely worked out very well because one of the things that people heavily requested was not necessarily parody, but they wanted a pattern. They either wanted everyone to have their own color, they wanted colors in 2s, or they wanted colors in 3s. So 3 would be gold and 3 would be silver. They wanted something like that, and this gave them a lot of power to choose that. And obviously it worked out very well. So
I mean, it also just opened up other interesting avenues, right? Like, well, so say an artist makes a really good piece of art, but they don't want their metallic color changed. That might imply that people would not want to vote for that piece of art. Or likewise with the mask, if people block off that ability, you run the risk of like, hey, your thing is really cool, your thing is really creative, your thing is really awesome, but you run a gamble. You're like, can it stand on the strengths of its own merits? In lieu of that, for some people it did. They progressed quite far. Others not so much. And that adds an interesting wrinkle to things that, some people aren't happy with. Some people feel like entries that were very good or very well crafted maybe lost because of that. But it just comes with the territory of having a contest like this, designing characters to fit into a team unit. We might keep the mask consent rule in the future, but not the other two.
It's gonna depend, because I've been asking people about this. Like I've been trying to garner thoughts on this recently because we reopened the general discussion topic.
Yeah.
So I've been putting out feelers, trying to see what people think. And gosh, who was it that made a good point? Let me try and dig it up. If you have anything more you'd like to say.
Okay, yeah, I'll fill time. I mean, the other thing that was discussed while LJ finds that in the topic was how to do voting, because there were some controversial points about that. Since there were 4 characters to vote on, a lot of people, and this kind of played into our decision to have the metallic colors and spear tips be changed. It was like, well, a member named Hazash wrote up a big post and was like, I want parity. He was one of the primary people that was like, there needs to be some degree of parity between them. So here's what you could do. You could stagger voting character by character. That was one solution. It was like, do a Qualis contest, announce the Canon Qualis, then do the Pooks polling, announce the Canon Pooks, so on and so on until you're done. And that way people could change their vote based on who won last. So if a gold Qualis won, you might not necessarily want a gold Gaki to win. Or mandate that people build all 4 and enter them as a unit, which was what I heavily considered. That was something I was advocating for internal. Actually, I advocated for both. I thought both were decent compromises, but ultimately there were too many problems with them.
I found.
So we didn't like to do it. All right. So basically, like, we just felt forcing people to build all 4 at once and enter was just too restricting, especially for people that signed up to only do 1. Say you build the parts, you order the parts rather, you build a mock, you get everything together, you take your pictures, you have it ready to go, and then we're like, hey, so just gonna drop this on you. You have to also get the other 3. It wouldn't have necessarily been that difficult for the Hagah because they are metru builds. It still just wasn't something we felt comfortable doing. So that's why we decided, just keep things as they were and just do them all at once, even though it was a lot of polls.
Mm-hmm.
Not my ideal solution, but it is what it is. Now I'll just continue your thoughts about the feedback about consent rules.
So I did ask, because someone, Humus,
Humus, yeah.
Asked about Tuyet's mask. Mock entries will define if they allow their mask to be changed. Will mock entries define if they allow their mask to be changed like the Hagah, or will it be a placeholder like Helric's? And I said, I mean, I could see either or. The compromise for the Hagah contest was because, excuse me, what mask the Hagah wore mattered far less to the character than anything else, ultimately. And it was, at the end of the day, the greatest source of artistic liberty. Because the mask that the Hagah wore was not a binding power. It could be almost any mask, sans a few very illegal ones. You know, like Makuta masks or stuff like that. So, that choice, it's like, whoever gets to make it chooses what mask the Hagah is associated with, even though it's not the power. And ultimately, that lent itself well to, you know, creators getting to make that decision. And then fans voting on it and being like, I really like this one instead of this one. If nothing else was changed, you know? And like Sakota even mentions in the Patreon chat, it was also important not to get two of the same masks. Exactly. It's a very good point. So, ultimately, that compromise worked very well to allow artistic liberty, artistic input, and it allowed people some options. Excuse me. So, when it comes to the Helric's, Artaka, and the Tuyet contest, the mask that ends up being canonized is canonized also as the official shape of that mask power. So the mask of creation, the mask of psychometry, believe that's Helrix's, and the mask of intangibility, which would be Tuyet's. So a mock placeholder is fine, but the artist gets to either use that placeholder, assuming it's a unique design, or make their own. That's the deal. So
That's fair.
They can't do anything else, but they can change that portion of it. So people are curious, you know, would we do that again? We haven't got a whole lot of reception as to whether or not people would like to see it done. I'm a little more inclined to just do it the way we did with Helrix and Artaka. It was a pretty fair compromise. It didn't really, you know, don't fix what isn't broken, I suppose. With this case, again, it mattered a lot more because the Hagah could have worn almost any mask. So, that was that whole thing.
Yeah, but then you still have my opinions always, which were like, I do wish the design of the mask wasn't entirely shackled to the artwork portion. And it still would be in this case, you know, if people give consent for it to change, say for Tuyet, I'm sure people would opt for a new mask in a lot of cases. But it does add a bit more variety. You know, say someone uses a 3D print and they say, no, don't change it. You know, that locks that in as an option. Like, I don't know. Because Toa Hagah's main beef wasn't necessarily the fact of the Hagah specifically. He was arguing from the principle of the artist shouldn't be able to unilaterally override the design of the mockist, because some people may have chosen the masks for very particular reasons, like proportion, for how they fit on the body, for aesthetic flow, etc., etc.
Yeah, but at the same time, this is in regards to the Hagah, which are very specifically, like, it can be any mask. In terms of, like, let's say, Tuyet, the deal is the mockists create the inspiration model. They create the basis. But that isn't canonized.
Right.
But when you go into the art, you can make your own mask, but everything else, more or less, needs to stay the same. You're just adding on to the base, but you're still getting to have input. So you're not just drawing someone else's creation.
That's fair.
So it's all about that creative balance. It's all about allowing both parts of it to have input and be a part of the creative process to craft something. Some people might just
Yeah.
want to straight up make whatever the basis mock is. We've seen that before, and that's totally fine. But this gives people the option to do that.
True. Yeah, we're still surveying feedback on it, but that is a good point. We'll see how that all shakes out. But for this contest, I think it was a very good thing to put in place.
Yes, it was.
I was very pleased with how it all worked out. So that pretty much that set us on the course. We knew what we were going to do at that point. We'd made plenty of rule revisions at this point. We were ready to go. We were raring up. Do we want to talk about the actual contest and any issues we had? Okay.
Oh yeah. Any issues we had, all the issues we had. So a couple days later, after Meso's final post on May 14th, 2021, a day that will live on in infamy, we started officially the entry period for the Hagah contest. Contest 3, Honor Guard. And the rules were, it must utilize the upper portion and lower portion of the Toa metru torso build as it is intended, i.e. not as hips or shoulders, etc. Torsos may be used upside down. We can get into that later. Have the primary color correspond with the respective Toa's Rahaga. Feature a shield. It didn't need to be a Hagah shield, but they had to have a shield and a single-ended spear. So one thing on one end of the spear, like Norix and Aruni's. Yep. Must feature metallic armor. The armor can't be standard colors like Mata Red, Metru Blue, etc. Must have metallic armor placement that is in parity with the other two Hagah. And must only have a single shade of metallic armor. The entries couldn't be shorter than Wenua Metru or taller than Aruni, and you needed to show proof of that. Put a pin in that. And then specifically for Pooks, no entry for the character could use the Canon design of the Mask of Emulation. It could only use another design. So,
pretty extensive list of rules.
It's very
restrictive. Be fair.
It's very
a lot
restrictive.
of people say too much. I would say it's appropriate for the circumstances. Just to say straight up, spoiler alert, we don't really intend to do many other contests quite as restrictive as these because there's no need to. This was always going to be the most limiting. It just was.
Yeah. Exactly. And so it's this was always going to be difficult. This was always going to be, there were going to be unpopular decisions made. But ultimately, it was the least of our worries. Because as I've been watching the reception afterwards, and people have been saying, really happy that they decided to, make it so that they had to look like the other Hagah. That was always a popular decision. It was an unpopular one for mockists. But at the end of the day, for canonicity and for the folks who wanted parity with the other Towahaga for a cohesive team unit, that was the call that people were really pushing for.
Yeah. It just made the most sense,
So, yeah, it's rough. Real quick, we will be getting to the YouTube comments eventually, but I did want to point this out. The Bionicle Archives commented, saying, the Archives are glad to report that the 4 Canon Towahaga are almost done and just about ready for display. Thanks for the great contest, TTV. Also, I digress, but I'm glad you know who is gone. And we'll get into that soon, too.
The actual Bionicle Archives?
Yes, the actual Bionicle Archives. Happy to see you. Oh. Thanks for tuning in. So,
thank you.
For anyone unaware, the Bionicle Archives are a Bionicle museum run by a incredibly swell fellow. A swello. So, look him up. All right, back to the contest stuff. So, the entry period lasted from It lasted from May 14th until June 11th. And in that time, we got about 400, a little over or a little under, around 400 individual character entries.
True.
It was a
Which,
lot.
considering there were 4 characters on display, I see a narrative going around that the Haga wasn't as popular.
Yeah, I don't know where this is
weren't
coming
as many.
from.
There weren't as many entries. For the art portion,
It's true.
that is true. For the mock portion, didn't it get more than Artaka?
Yeah, it did. We got more entries into the Haga contest than the Artaka contest.
Which is weird. I wouldn't think that would have been the case, personally. But maybe, I don't know, maybe it's because they were easier to build. There was less of a barrier for entry because they were metru builds. I don't know. I can see why. Yeah, like what Crunch was saying. They use less parts. So it does make sense. There's a logical perspective. But I don't know. There's the narrative going around that they were less popular, and that's just not true.
Yeah.
But it was controversial. People were generally... There was a contingent of people that were unhappy with the severity of the rules, ranging from all sides, but mostly from the mocking community. And I understand. There were lots of memes about how similar a lot of the entries were looking, which eventually got disproven. Especially Gaki, which, yeah, out of the 4, Gaki did have the most commonality.
Which I think should speak pretty well to the general idea that people had for Gaki, Like, it gave people an idea of what they wanted Gaki to roughly look like.
Yeah.
So.
But with the other 3, there was a lot of really good variety. There were people that used upside-down torsos to kind of give a look similar to, Pohatu Mata. There were a good few of those. There were a lot of really, bulky mocks that used metru torsos as, shoulder pieces. The winning entry, obviously, double uses them as forearm pieces. So there were and lower legs. So there were a lot of creative parts usage going around. Again, people did some really out there stuff with some of them, which was a little too abstract to work. But I mean, it was just cool to see.
Mm-hmm.
So for 3 out of 4, I was very pleased with the diversity on display. And it's not like Gaki was a bad thing to not feature it, but
yeah, and even then,
for the most part,
Gaki was still fine.
Yeah. Good entries.
Yeah. So it starts, everyone enters things, we ask for corrections, we go through the usual process. It's just Meso and I basically just going around and doing stuff.
Yeah.
It's tiring, it's exhausting. The 3 or so weeks come and go. And then a month goes by. And then a month and a half.
Yeah.
So let's talk about major time delay and controversy number 1. The delay for starting the polls. So there were a lot of things going on at the same time around July. For starters, the way we ran this contest was anyone was allowed to enter any amount of Toa Hagah, as few as 1, as many as 4. And what we would then do is we would divvy up those Haga into their own character-specific polls. So we would have Pook's polls, we would have Gaki polls, and so on. And then we'd whittle all of those down. So it's like running a bunch of different contests all at the same time. And in theory, it is a good idea, and I think it did work. I think it worked fine. The problem is that it's 2 people versus 400 individual entries. Individual characters you need to sift through. You need to get into polls. You need to make sure are compliant as much as you can. And also, you're going to miss things, because it's 400 being vetted by 2. So
yeah.
It's a daunting task. Well, as we're tackling that, there's also a very exciting thing happening in the community. Sakota's Legend of the Bionicle System set had qualified for the BrickLink program. It had qualified to be a part of that. And so obviously we're very excited about it. We really want to like try and advertise it and encourage it and keep our eye on it. No, Sakota, it's not all your fault. Hang on, we're not done yet.
It occurs to me, this is the first time we've mentioned Sakota's project
In public.
publicly
After,
since it didn't pan out.
Yeah, there's a reason for that too, and we're going to get into that. So that's happening. That's very, very exciting. And also, I need help working on a video that I'm making. And I released it a few days ago. It's every Bionicle set made. It's my magnum opus, Eljay's reviews, every Bionicle set. Well, I needed help with that. I needed Meso and Eljay to come up here to help work on the video. And I'll tell you what, that was an exhausting process. Like, I heavily downplayed exactly how much work that was in the video.
You really did. I noticed that. I was like,
it was for time, honestly. And the thing is, we were up for hours. Like, I think we were awake for almost... It wasn't quite 24 hours, but it was in the teens, the mid to late teens.
It was close.
It was really close. We were working so hard on that video. And
well, it's because we had to like get them down. They were like caked in dust. You had them on like these shelves. We had to like get them off the shelves. We had to clean them extensively in these like giant water tubs, which we had to periodically like dump and refill.
Yeah, because they were full of friggin'
and then like
awfulness.
I've never like cleaned my Bionicle sets to that extent.
But they needed to be cleaned thoroughly for the camera.
Yeah.
And our efforts paid off. Like, people kept on saying, yeah, no, you guys did a great job. Those sets looked mint. It's like, yeah, it was fantastic. But it was unfathomably exhausting. So that was going on. We were doing that. So we're physically exhausted. And then also Sakota's project happens. And unfortunately, they don't go the way... The things don't go the way we wanted them to or thought they would. There were some really weird things about how it was all said and done and handled.
Dude. Yeah. I have major beef still that I've like we've never talked about it, and we might in the future in more detail, but let me just paint you a picture of what happened. We made a video the night before, right? While we're doing all this prep. We have the video queued up to go live. Hey, let's vote on it. And I set my alarm to like get enough rest. I get up like an hour after the polls go live, right? We have it scheduled to go. I get up. You guys are already up. I get up and you're like, oh yeah, like 5 of them have already, 5 of them have already qualified. I was like, what? Yeah, they're already through, and Sakota's isn't yet. I'm like, but it's been an hour. Like, yes, it's been an hour. I'm like, my mind couldn't process what I was seeing, and it was just hours of like the slow creeping incoming depression as I realized like Bionicle's gonna lose to a bird. We're here to honor it and do this thing. And we're putting off doing our like community contest stuff that we need to be doing because we're focused on these other like things, and we're Bionicle, and it's gonna lose to a bird, and I'm just like, what?
Because
what is life anymore?
Because keep in mind, like this video, like this was for the 20th anniversary of Bionicle.
Yeah, we had planned to put this on Bionicle Day, you know?
Yeah, well, its release date changed a couple of times. I wanted to release it at the first of the year, then I wanted to release it during Bionicle Day, and I was like, all right, fine. I'm going to release it on the anniversary of my recap finale, which is what ended up working out. And then, yeah, this random New Zealand bird I'd basically never heard of came in and slowly crept past
Crushed.
Sakota's, and that was it. And it really, really, really demotivated us. And it was
Yep.
a difficult thing to kind of wrap our heads around.
It was a while before I climbed out of the mental pit on that one, because I had I emotionally invested a lot into that, maybe too much. Some people were like, Mr. Skeptic Realist should have checked his expectations more. Yeah, that's true. Even other people in TTV who liked Sakota's project, and I mean, we all love Sakota. He's great. He's incredibly freaking talented. But
Yeah.
even other people were like, "Hey, you should temper your expectations a bit. The broader community might not necessarily be as on board." And we were like, "No, of course they are. This is Bionicle's shot. They wouldn't pass it up."
And the thing is, there's a lot for it. It's not. I hate having to do this every time, but it's not as simple as Bionicle. Like, Bionicle fans didn't want it. It isn't as simple as that. There are so many other factors that went into it. But
yeah, that's fair.
On
the morning of, I wasn't so merciful. I was like, "Yeah, Bionicle fans suck."
Yeah.
But I see the gray area now, and I didn't then.
There's so much more to it. But that morning, watching that happen, watching as other communities were bagging on things, watching as the Bionicle community
Making fun of us.
Yeah, it was exhausting, and it really put a damper on things. And obviously, we were distracted at the time because we had a lot of work to do, and that's what we ended up doing. But like
I had to wake up that day like that, and I ended the day cleaning Solek.
Yeah.
Let that sink in for a minute. Not a good day.
No, it was not. So it was really, really physically and emotionally exhausting. So we do the video. We are beat. We are so friggin' tired. It's the middle of summer. I live in a wasteland.
You do.
It's miserable. So for Bionicle Day, we had agreed to do a podcast, a Knack and Jay, discussing it. So we do the Knack and Jay, and it's very raw, and it's very emotional. It's very emotionally charged. We're thinking angrily. And the Knack and Jay itself is good, but ultimately,
it hasn't been released.
And I think... I actually think it's probably for the best that it hasn't been, because while it's good, I'm glad we've had that distance. We definitely should still talk about it in the future, but
I want to one day maybe release it as a patron exclusive if you still have the footage, because it's cool. It was our first ever in-person Knack and Jay. We had a backdrop. We were in our minifigure outfits, I think.
No, we were. Yeah.
It was cool. I was really happy with it, and I was bummed, but I was bummed that it didn't get released, but I was also bummed, period, because it really wouldn't have been a good idea to release it. Like you said, we were incredibly depressed. We were very down. It was going to be on the freaking Bionicle Day stream, and we spent 40 minutes talking about how is the Bionicle community intrinsically toxic or not exactly celebratory vibes.
Yeah. And we were like, we really had to debate this. It didn't feel right to release that during Bionicle Day, which was a celebration of the theme. And then you have this where it's just so downtrodden.
You guys suck.
It's like, yeah, thanks everyone. So it's
not a good idea.
Yeah. And
so you have intense depression, physical exhaustion from doing manual labor for days on end and not getting any sleep, mental strain from dealing with all this, and the crushing weight knowing that we should be doing the Hagah polls, but we aren't, and we have to look forward to sifting through 400 plus entries by ourselves the moment we get back home. It kind of led us to procrastinate a bit. Not a good thing, but a very human thing.
Yeah,
I feel.
And it's it sucks. It really does. But holy smokes, it was hit after hit after hit, and it just didn't let up for a while, and we couldn't We couldn't get to it right away, and ultimately that was all those things. And I mean, I personally was having a really difficult time because that video really took it out of me. Like, Meso, you can attest to this.
You were basically a walking corpse.
At one point, I partially fell through a ceiling. I still haven't fixed the ceiling.
Really?
I have to. I gotta get some plaster and like fix that.
Been like 5 months.
I know. I've been busy.
He literally like he was up in like the second floor of like
A detached
shed or something.
It was a detached garage. I was upstairs. I was getting boxes to put Bionicle waves in so that we could move them. And I took a step to go get a box. Well, part of the floor is just drywall and insulation. So I wasn't looking where I was putting my foot. And I put my weight down, and it's not a weight bearing anything. My foot just goes right through the darn thing, and I partially fall through the ceiling. So I crawl back out of that, covered in dust and in fiberglass because of the insulation. And I crawl back, like I walk downstairs. I'm like, hey guys, I just fell through a ceiling. I was not.
I'm sorry for laughing.
No, it's hilarious.
You weren't okay.
It's
no, but
pretty...
you weren't okay. You're like, this is bad.
So, like, I had a massive, like, a substantial bruise on my right leg for like weeks after that.
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad.
So we kind of got we had a really hard time around then. It was very difficult, and that's why it took so long. And eventually we buckled down. And we got to work on things.
Yeah.
So, suddenly Orange's reply is like, I come in and hear a story where it sounds like Eljay almost died. And I mean, honestly, kind of, because if I had kept going, because what had stopped me was the fact that I was still partially on a weight-bearing part of the floor, and what basically stopped me was it got all the way to my hip, and the rest of my body was still up above. So I'm like, my right leg is like dangling through the ceiling. But if I had gone forward any further, I would have just fallen through. I would have fallen through the floor and just tumbled onto a bunch of stuff and then eventually hit the ground. So I don't really know what could have happened. It was not a good situation for me to be a part of.
No, like we joke about it, but it could have turned south like real fast.
Yeah.
And minor tangent. Thank you for coming out to listen, Oranges. I appreciate it. I appreciate seeing you here.
Also, congratulations on your video release and sending Halo 5 off. Good job.
Yeah, like, unsolicited plug. Dude recently released a video, Halo Friends Say Goodbye to Halo 5. That was a saga getting that up.
Yeah.
Like, Oranges was posting about it on Twitter. You know, for anyone who doesn't know, he's Mr. Reviving Bionicle, who's also Halo superfan. He had a struggle with this video. There were like some copyright issues. It got blocked for a time, I think. But you know, he got it up, and the dude has like way more love for Halo 5 than the game deserves. And, anybody who likes Halo, please go check that out.
But yeah, so it was a very difficult time, and that's honestly ultimately what caused the major delay. So we finally got the polls up on July 22nd, and those went fine. You know, everyone voted, and it went through with no real issue.
Until it didn't.
Until we got to the end. We got to the end of the polls, and it lined up actually really well with Bionicle Day. It's like, hey, so I can't get the every Bionicle set ever done in time because ultimately it's too soon. It needs more time in the oven, which it honestly really did. I didn't have enough time to get it done. So why don't we announce the winners for the mock, like the beginning portion of the Hagah contest? And they're like, yeah, sure, that works. So we announced the winners, and it goes off generally without a hitch. Right up until people notice there's a handful of problems.
Yeah.
specifically with one of the winners.
The big man.
Yeah, so just for some further context, I'll go ahead and bring that one up.
Please
right there.
do.
So for some further context, so that we got the contest, the voting portion for the first part done, and we announced the winners. And let me see here, when was that? We announced the winners and announced the entry portion for the art period on August 11th.
Oof.
So just so everyone is aware, the topic closed October 2nd. We'll get into that. I was not supposed to. It was supposed to be 1 month. So, let's talk about this entry. This was made by _double. _double was the winner for the mock portion of the Hellrix contest. And he came under a lot of fire because he's kind of a jerk. He's like not
That's
pleasant.
really what it boils down to.
He's not a pleasant person. He's rarely ever agreeable, it seems, and he bullied other contestants in the Artaka contest, even before the Artaka contest. Just absolutely.
He toes that fine line between like snarky community figure who like is kind of like a pretentious jerk, but maybe like plays it up for a character, from what I hear, and then just being outright like antagonistic and like belittling to people.
Yeah.
So it's like that. Oh well, is the superiority complex a bit, or is he actually just an a-hole? And it's hard to tell which sometimes, but for us it was pretty clear.
Yeah. And so so he won the Bumanga part. And there are two issues with his Bumanga entry. One, we had a rule stipulation saying that for the shields, you had to have a shield, but the shield had to be equipped in the Haga's hand or on their back. It couldn't be anywhere else. Now, people thought this was a really weird rule, and the reason for it wasn't for any canon reason. Ultimately, it was because we didn't want people to take advantage of the shield and just put it anywhere. Like, we didn't want people like putting it on their shoulders or like putting it on their chest or putting it like on their shin or something like that.
If a rule of ours is weirdly phrased, it's usually because we're either thinking of ways it could be abused, or people have outright asked us questions trying to find loopholes around it. You know, I saw one comment, people were like, oh, I want to have someone use a Rotuka shield as like a surfboard. I want to have it like built into one of their legs. Or maybe we could use it as torso armor and they could launch a Rotuka spinner from their freaking chest. Someone was like, I want to use it as a hat. I saw in one like Discord server, like put it on top of the mask. And I'm just like, how about you just use it as a shield? Like, stop trying to be funny. Stop trying to like circumvent. Like, it's a shield, all right. You know, you can put it in there. You can have it hold it in the hands, or you can maybe strap it to the back. Just use it like a normal shield. You know, you might ask, what's the distinction really at the end of the day between holding it and having it mounted on the arm? Practically, not much, but it's a matter of specificity. It's a matter of just saying like, hey, this is a regular shield. Use it how, you know, freaking Kopaka or the Haga, who you're literally supposed to emulate. Just use it how they use it. Don't try to make a big fiasco out of it. Because if you open the doors to have it mounted on the arms, why not mount it on the legs? Why not mount it on the freaking neck? Why not mount it on the head? As dumb as that sounds to us, people will find a way. They will try to find a way. That's what we've learned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was issue 1. Issue 2 was his size comparison. We mandated that you needed to have a size comparison between your entry, and it could not be taller than Iruni or shorter than Wenua Metru. Again, this was also kind of a way to try desperately to curtail particular joke entries. Unfortunately, what underscore double decided to do was compare the height with Rahaga Iruni and Chiraga Winua.
Yep.
The image is no longer posted. He took the image down. He's claimed that he takes images down for space on Flickr. At which point, okay, how's about hosting them on Imgur or Brickshelf?
Yeah. I doubt that very heavily.
Yeah.
There's definitely a reason behind him taking it down.
Yeah, but of course, we assume that because we don't have any goodwill or good faith from him because he's never demonstrated it. So,
more or less.
Unfortunately, we missed both of these things during the entry period, and we could not get them, Sakota mentions, or on the boards where we can host images. Unfortunately, we couldn't address it in time, and by the time we'd noticed these things, the entry had won. And it's like, well, great. Now we're in a position of, do we invalidate what the voters wanted and just kick the entry out? Or do we just kind of eat crow and just be like, well, we missed it. We're sorry, and just move forward?
Which is ultimately the path we chose.
Yeah.
I wasn't too happy about it. And again, it comes down to the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law, right? At the end of the day, do either of those things devalue the entry enough to get it disqualified? No. None of it breaks canon. He does have a shield that he can use practically. He didn't do anything cheeky with the shield. The size comparison was an attempt to be funny and circumvent the rules, but also it is still in parody. It's not a Titan. It's not a super tiny Haga. So it's really not the end of the world. It wasn't worth undoing the choice of the people just for those things that we missed. We put those rules in place to catch bad actors. And even though I think Double is a bad actor, not in that instance. The real issue, though, and the reason why it's a problem worth, owning up to, is because we did make people change their entries for less. We made people fix having the shields be wrist mounted. We made people take pictures of height comparisons. People straight up had to buy sets they didn't have in order to do height comparisons. In some cases, I've heard that mentioned.
That is not something they had to do. We accepted size comparisons via via Stud.io and other software. So we never asked anyone to do that, nor required it. So just I want that understood.
Exactly. But there was a source of discontent about it. And so for that reason, I felt bad about missing it. It just legitimately did slip through the cracks. But it is what it is. We weren't going to take away the entry. However, what did we do, Eljay?
Well, eventually what we ended up doing, because we more recently talked about this. So because of these things, because of the pattern of behavior that underscore has shown, we have officially and indefinitely disbarred him from participation in the contests in terms of entering them. That doesn't just go for Canon contests. That goes for any contest we hold, period, bar nothing. He has proven himself to be absolutely unreasonable. He has messed around multiple times. He has a terrible attitude about the whole thing. He's mistreated on other entrants, other contestants. And we don't want that participation in these. And as such, we're through of it. We're sick of it. And he's not allowed to enter anything ever again.
Because it's not like this was all... Didn't he post meme videos or link to them when people wanted breakdown images or whatever?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, like it toes that line, right? Like I said, it's like, okay, well, did he do anything, that horribly violated the rules? No, he didn't do it in Hellrix, and he didn't do it here. The rule violations were, I could forgive them being, accidental or whatever. So that's not the reason why. The reason why is it's very clear he doesn't take it seriously. It's very clear, he's out to like mess around and troll and get laughs in his private servers. You know, he doesn't take it seriously. He posts fake, size comparison images, deliberately misunderstanding our rules. He screws with people when they want to see breakdown images of the builds by posting videos. And then for the stuff which we didn't take any action against before, but still counts against him in my books, he's generally just a toxic community presence who has no respect for other builders, personality wise.
And that's the big one. And that's honestly like the real big one, is just his general attitude and his behavior. It's like Boydo in the YouTube chat says, I typically liked his entries. He's being a troll. Welcome to the internet. Shouldn't have been banned. Well, when you're a member of a community and you're interacting and you're not doing so in good faith or not being appropriate or not doing things in an upstanding way and just being kind of a terrible person, and the community doesn't accept that, bye. That's it. I don't care if he's a troll. Maybe don't. Have you considered that? Maybe instead of trying to justify his trolling nature and his actively harmful nature, maybe just don't tolerate that. I don't care how good his builds are. It doesn't matter.
More or less.
This is a community, it's a community endeavor. And if he's just sitting there acting nastily to people in the community, his art be darned.
Yeah. I mean, I had very low opinion of him, but I was willing to be like, okay, whatever. Like, we called it out publicly with Hellrix. We were like, we don't support him. But we also weren't going to, like, discipline him for it then. It was like, well, we'll see what happens. Bygones be bygones. But then with this kind of stuff, like, it's one thing to be like, okay, maybe he accidentally broke the rules. The breakdown thing, the size comparison thing, his just general behavior, it just wasn't chill. Is it a war crime? No, but we're not interested in supporting it. And I think anybody who does support it, it is just like, it's whatever. It doesn't matter. I mean, ultimately that's your call, but I don't feel like it's producing a constructive environment. I feel like it encourages stuff.
Yeah. And then Anthony DiGiorno, I don't know. How about we troll anyway? And you will suffer the same fate. Maybe don't.
Suffer! That's
not only does all this, like, we came under fire for not giving an immediate response on the matter, and when people found out about it, like, other Bionicle, like, community leaders were coming to us and be like, hey, what are you guys gonna do? What are you guys gonna do? Are you gonna ban him? Are you gonna do anything about this? And we're like, we don't know. We're thinking about it. We need to, like, give this careful consideration.
People either wanted some action had to be taken. People were coming to us demanding, hey, you should address this. You should either disqualify the mock and do the voting over, or just do something about him, period. And we were like, ultimately, between the choice of him or his mock, I'd choose him any day, because his mock won. It didn't break any, like, core, defining rules we were willing to die on the hill on. It didn't affect the canonicity. It didn't affect the ability to be built. The mock wasn't really the issue.
Yeah.
The issue was him.
And honestly, if you want to, you're saying, in this this comment, let me see. Nothing you described was all that bad. Just feels like trolling, but it doesn't affect the quality of the final product. you're right. That's why it stayed, and he didn't.
More or less.
So if you want a separation from art and the artist, you got it.
Exactly.
Boydo also asked,
And
why not... Go ahead.
No, you finish.
Boydo asked, why not give consequences on a contest-by-contest basis? Because on a contest-by-contest basis, we've seen this behavior persist. This is culmination of that, and we're done tolerating it. Because every time this happens, not only do people get upset and people get hurt, and things become difficult, but then it comes back on us to try and handle it and fix it, and causes us undue strain and stress. So, we're done.
Yeah.
We're tired of it. If he has a problem with it, he can change his behavior. But this conversation is quite frankly over. This was not an unpopular decision either. His behavior has gone on for very long enough. And you know what? Someone made the point. He's already gotten 2 mocks in. Good job. The community likes him. I think that they're good representations of the characters, but they're also not canon. The art is. He's made his mark. He's had his contribution. And now we're tired of dealing with his behavior. And
there was a contingent of people who just wanted him straight up banned after like winning Hellrix. Because people were like, well, we don't want to see, the same person just sweep every character contest. And we didn't do that.
No.
Because that's overkill.
Yeah.
We didn't ban him for the Hellrix stuff. Because it was off-site. That'd be overkill. When taken in aggregate, everything that's happened now and as a whole kind of reached the limit. So it's whatever. There was a public discourse about it in the topic. A lot of his defenders came in and were like, you shouldn't have done that, it was too harsh. And then a lot of people were like, no, it was justified. And they fought for a bit, but ultimately it is what it is. I don't apologize for it.
No. And it's like it's not like we're banning him from the site. We're just tired of his behavior in terms of these contests. Yeah, it's no longer acceptable. And it also is in line with another rule we had to instate and institute pertaining to behavior. So,
oh boy.
I mean, we can get into that in a little bit. That we still have some other things to discuss, but that was the big thing.
Oh yeah.
I mean, still, congratulations to him for winning. The community obviously wanted it. They did want it, and that is fine. He won.
Full disclosure, I voted for it, and I've called him out, but I did vote for that one. Yeah. I did like the mock on its own principles. I didn't realize it broke rules. Maybe that would have changed my mind, but yeah, I liked it.
This is the separation of art from the artist, and the artist, it just is not going to be able to ascend any further because of actions of his own. And that's it. That's quite frankly it.
Cool.
Maybe in the future, maybe if he actually decides to be a better member of the community and, be polite and respectful and do things in good faith, maybe we can come back around. But no. For the time being, we're done with this segment. We're done with this tangent. We're done with this conversation. It's over.
So what we need to bridge into now, because you mentioned the rule about, the other rule we had to implement about conduct.
Yes.
So that's the exciting, the part 2 to all this. Because this was kind of the conclusion for the mock portion. Mm-hmm. That was really the end of the drama.
Yeah.
The art portion, the art by itself didn't really have a lot of drama. The entry period went off, more or less. But then there was another delay in the polls. There was another big delay in the polls, getting the polls up. I would like to discuss our need for help.
Yes.
And that whole situation. Because it directly bleeds into us getting overwhelmed, which led to that post we made, which then led to the big drama explosion, which I imagine a lot of people are going to be interested in talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Eljay and I are the only ones doing the contests. Why? You may ask. You're in a group with like 13 other people. You're on a message board full of people. Why? Why is it just you? Two avenues to that. Number one is the answer, and number two is that it wasn't always just us. The answer is because, as we've said before, TTV itself as an entity has changed. It has shifted a lot as a group. The entity doesn't exist anymore. People have splintered. People have moved away. People have lost interest. People have moved on to other things. And a lot of the people who are here now, Bionicle isn't their primary focus. It's not to say people don't like it. It's not their primary focus. The old guard of people, the old guard of pure Bionicle fans who made up the TTV contingent from 2009 to, I'd say, about 2017, has mainly phased out. We still talk to Var and Vin and,
I mean,
Envy.
we still have our friends group, but the friends group and the channel are distinct.
Yeah,
they're very different.
We talk to them basically every day, but they don't really have much interest in creating content anymore. Envy, Mange still participates in MonkeyCast and the occasional Brick Feed, and you might catch Vin on the occasional Brick Feed or Var on the occasional TTV podcast, but the Bionicle sphere of people who are actively paying attention to the community and interacting with it on this kind of a level, yeah, it's basically just you and I.
Yeah, more or less.
Shout out to my boy Vin in the chat. Hey!
Is Vin in the chat? I don't see him.
Yeah, I think he's listening in.
Yeah, he is listening. Hey, Vin.
I know you're here. Like I said, we still talk to the guys like every day, but they're not really interested in the participation of these. And quite frankly, I don't blame them. It's not like would we appreciate the help? Sure. But would I deliberately go out of my way to subject any of my friends to what we're already subjecting ourselves to? Not really. I wouldn't wish it on them, not when they've made clear that's not where their interest lies. So the problem comes in, is it sustainable between the two of us? And categorically, the answer is no. It is not. But that wasn't always clear to us. The contests had special circumstances associated with them. With Hellrix, it was not only our first time doing them, but it was also, we had to deal with the Hosrix situation.
Mm-hmm.
So constantly it was in the back of our head, would this have been better without that? So then we did our Taka, and we cracked more down on meme entries. And it was better. There was less drama. But there were still a few things. There were a few tiny little things that did slip through. The Geru situation, the painted parts discussion, all these controversial community talking points that, on the whole, yeah, it would have been nice to have some more eyes on that, especially with stuff like the situation where we had to have one person change their art, which put a pin in that in our Taka. We'll circle back to that. But it was difficult because we wanted to have a team of people, ideally, who we could trust. We wanted to have a team of people who we could count on to stick to things the way that we've, outlined them. We would have discussions with the community. We'd be frank, open, and honest. We would hash out the rules. We'd take feedback. We'd gather that feedback, and then when we lock down a rule set, and when we say, here are the rules at the end of the deliberation, apply them equally, apply them fairly. Don't try to change the rules to suit a personal agenda of XYZ group, and don't try to look for loopholes where they don't exist. And that's a tough ask, right? It's a tough ask for people to be as invested and as granular and as paying attention to every little tidbit scrap of information as we are.
Mm-hmm.
Do they exist? I'm sure they do. Spoiler alert, we've brought on a group of people to help with it, and I think they did help with it. Mm-hmm. But back then, specifically during the intermediary period for the Hagah, between our Taka and the Hagah, we were entertaining this idea, and we were trying to figure out, well, who could we ask? Who could we bring on? Who would we like to? But we didn't. This is a key point that will come up later. We didn't resolve that discussion before the Haga. And with the benefit of hindsight, I do wish we had.
Yep.
Because even though I tried to help by doing the topics and being more of an active participation, so LJ didn't have to shoulder most of the burden, it still wasn't enough. It was still too much for us. And what do you know? Mistakes happened because stuff slipped through.
Yeah.
So what specifically was going through your mind and going through our minds, because we were kind of in this together during that month-long wait between posting the polls?
Between posting the polls and what?
The artwork. That period where like our mental health was frying.
Oh, well, I was exhausted. I was doing other things like working on other projects all the while, trying to attend to other matters. I was also like out and about a lot of different times. Just trying to get away from things and kind of reset as much as possible. I went to Brick Fair, for instance. Oh, but that was before, I guess, August.
Yeah.
So
we had other things going on in our lives, and when we did opt to engage, I mean, I'm not trying to complain or act like this is, some difficult burden. I know people will cynically say, well, you chose to do this, and you are right, we did. But there is a point when dealing with the magnitude of the community opinions on things and a lot of the negative feedback people give that isn't the most kind. It can be very harsh. It can be very biting. Especially with the double situation, seeing how that shook out. We weren't happy that we slipped through the cracks and that we missed that stuff. And people pounced. People were ready to tear us a new one because it validates the meme of TTV being like, criminally incompetent. They can't even follow their own rules. Lol, lol, lol. LJ is a dictator and he can't even follow his own dictatorial rules. Abuse being flung our way, and even in the community towards each other. We would have these discussion topics and people would just go at each other about things. All through the discussion topics. That whole metru build thing we talked about earlier, that wasn't as cordial as I made it seem. People were vicious about that issue towards each other, not so much us, because the mocking community hates the fact that the lore community would deign to like restrict their creativity based on story rules. And the story community is like, no, the reason why we're doing this is to make it lore accurate. Just because mockists want to make something cool doesn't mean we should step on what Greg says. And people got pissed, and a lot of that was directed towards us. A lot of it was just in our midst, and it made it like constantly hostile.
Yep.
It was a lot. It was a lot to deal with. And I think it just kind of wore us down for a bit, to the point where like we had a fun trip planned that we had been wanting to hold for a long time. We had done a trip in the last year that only a few of us got to go on because COVID was at its height, and we were like, some of us didn't feel safe traveling, like me, like Vin, a few others. And we were like, hey, we want to do a fun get together with as many people in the group as we can. And we had this plan for months. And it just so happened to be right around the same time the Haga art contest entry period ended.
Yes. So the Haga art entry period, it was fine. There were a few issues. People needed some time extensions, so we did extend the time of the entry period. It was straight up just too short, we admit. So we extended it a bit. And it ended again, so it went from the beginning of August to the beginning of October. Well, October 1st, I straight up wasn't home. I was traveling already. And what we needed to do was advise everyone's like, hey, we needed a little bit of time to kind of sift through things. We need to go ahead and make sure everything is all good. Also, we're going to be on vacation. We won't be here. Bear with us. We'll let you know when we're back and good to go. unfortunately, that message was never sent.
Nope.
We just dropped the ball, and it never ended up getting sent or disseminated to anyone. So, unfortunately, from everyone's perspective, we just up and vanished for 2 weeks.
These sound like excuses, and in a manner they are, but it's also it's like I said at the start. This is the human element, that comes into play. We are people. There isn't some grand excuse or conspiracy or well thought out logical justification for why we were late with the polls or late with putting out that reply. The answer's we were packing, we were getting our stuff together. We were we had procrastinated a bit on preparing for the trip, like I'm sure anyone does. You've had that experience before where you're running late for something and you have to pack, you have to get all your stuff together. You got to make sure the travel plans are lined up. Got to make sure you get to the airport on time. Got to make sure you book your place you're staying at. Your itinerary is all lined up for what you're going to do when you're there. And plain and simple, it just slipped through the cracks.
Yeah.
And the benefit of hindsight, I wish it hadn't, because it would have saved us a lot of what you're about to hear. Maybe wouldn't have quite happened in the way it shook out. But again, it is what it is.
It sucks. It, wish it didn't happen, but it did. And that's kind of just the way it goes. So
I will say, for what it's worth, I'm sorry for the radio silence. I know it seemed like at times we just would go dark. And factually, that is what happened. I know that must not feel great from a community perspective, being left in the dark. And it's something that we hope will not happen again, because we're not happy about it either. But it is what it is.
Yeah. And it's we can't go back and change it. We can just do better next time.
Exactly.
And I really do understand. I do get it. I have similar feelings with 343 Industries and Halo Infinite and their absolute botchery of a monetization system. And I want to know what they're going to do to repair it. And I get it. I do. So, sorry.
There are things that I think people give us a hard time for that we don't deserve. And us going dark is one of those things that, I get it. That makes sense why people would get a little
That's
antsy.
the most reasonable. At the same time,
maybe not to the degree that people did.
Yeah. Sometimes people go a little too far into it. So, we get back after 2 weeks, because I was gone for a longer time than everyone else.
Yeah, you had other stuff to do.
And I get back, and we're hearing about it. And we're like, what do we do? And it wears down on us again, because we're still in ways recovering from July. And it exhausts us, and we get worn down. And it's tiring. And eventually it's okay, we need to do something about this. So Meso and I finally, in our busy schedules, because it's now it's beginning to be the holiday season. So Meso's super busy. I still work. I also work full time. So our days line up very rarely.
For those who don't know context, Eljay's a 911 dispatcher, and I worked at Target in the electronics department. So when he says holiday, it's I'm the retail worker TM, and Eljay's the I'm sure you have a lot on your plate mentally guy. you put on a good face, but I'm sure it gets to you at times.
It's very, very rarely, very sometimes. We had a really difficult incident right before I left for our big trip, and it was an incident bad enough to where I had to be a part of a debriefing, which has never happened before. I've never been a part of one of those. It was very, very bad, but the trip was really good because gave distance. So ultimately, we get back, and Meso and I finally decide we need to sit down and address everything and finally discuss it. So we release a State of the Contests update a month after the entry period began a month after the entry period ended October 2nd, and we released this November 2nd. and we kind of gave an update on where the contests are and where things are. And the big takeaways from this is that we instituted a new contest-specific rule. And it's a modification of a site-wide rule that we have. One of our board rules, it's behavioral rules. It's basically just respect the members, respect the staff. And so we've definitely, we made a modification of it and added it to the contests generally. It is Rule 0. Any members found to be disrespecting or subjecting toxicity upon the contest hosts, cast members, staff, or other members of the boards during, about, and regarding the Canon contests will be permanently banned from the site with no warnings or temporary suspensions. This sounds really harsh, and it is. Because it's not a board-wide rule, it's contest-specific. Because of how much we have, people have not gotten their behavior under control, despite numerous times telling people to do so. We have basically a 3 strikes, you're out rule. It's kind of just a way we go about it. And the way it is you get 3 suspensions. Sorry, you get 3 warnings, and then you get 3 suspensions. On your 3rd and final suspension, you get banned. Permanently. Well, in this instance, people have been so toxic and so terrible, it's not worth trying to go through all that hassle and hoo-ha and whatnot. It's just not. If you can't behave appropriately, especially for something like this, we're tired of dealing with the mental strain of it.
People were asking to us, and we're like, well, why are you guys so stressed out? And we explained to them, how vitriolic people could be, how people seem to, hate our guts and would go on the board just to, screw with us, or be, snarky or disrespectful or insulting, or try to, make life more difficult for us. And we didn't really get a lot of sympathy when we would talk about that. And I was like, well, why not? And it was like, because you guys shouldn't tolerate it. You just shouldn't. If it's on your boards and people come there, you shouldn't allow them to be that over-the-top vitriolic. And I was kind of well, yeah, I was of the mindset of, because I always am too, this sounds like I'm being egotistic, and maybe I am, but I'm too kind to people who may or may not deserve it. LJ and I were having talks about this, and I was basically like, okay, look, I agree, but I don't want to do anything to people who have done it up until this point. I want to make it a new rule. Be like, please don't do this, or else this is gonna happen. And then that way, any people that do it at that point will be an abject violation that can't really be ignored or written off. I think there was a compromise reached where you did discipline some people who had been so overt about it prior up until that point, the repeated problem offenders. But then other people, we were like, okay, well, we'll see what happens, and if they respect the new rule, then they can stay. And there were a few people who just straight up just didn't acknowledge the new rule. They were just immediately
immediately someone was like, good on you for finally opting to fix the staff problem, something you could have fixed a year or so ago. And it's like, all right, this is someone who's entered the previous contest with joke entry, trying to be disruptive. They've had a pattern of this behavior, of being rude and insightful and disrespectful, and that's persisted. And it's instant. It was minutes after I posted that, okay, bye, we're done. And yeah, I can already see their behavior elsewhere. They still refuse to act in good faith. So it's okay, well, if you want to be unbanned, great, cool. Clearly you don't want to enough. Otherwise, maybe you'd, not act that way, which is poorly.
Well, I mean, I can understand someone's response to the rules being being skeptical or questioning. And if it had
That's
just
fine.
been a post about, if it had just been a post where we laid down these rules, I'd be like, okay, if you have like a dissenting opinion or whatever, like that's of course chill. If you don't like us in this manner, that's also chill. But it's the context of the posts where we're like really talking about, yeah, okay, let me level with you guys. These few months have been hard. We've had a lot on our plates. We've had a lot of mental health issues, and I don't think that excuses everything. But like, just cut us some slack here, and we're gonna get our act together. We're gonna get back on the road. We're gonna finish this contest up, and hey, we can't sustain these anymore by ourselves. We recognize that, and we recognize that it's led to problems. We need more help. That was our post. So it's less like, here are our ironclad rules. You will be banned if you disrespect us, and more, here's why it's necessary. We're not doing too well. We're sorry. We're going to do better. And here's how we're going to do better. And to have that be met with like immediate snark is just like, all right, well.
No, thank you for being our first example.
More or less. Like it's whatever.
Yeah.
There were others, but.
Yeah. And it's frustrating. It really is frustrating. We were asked about, because it is a little vague about what disrespect means, and ultimately, again, it is going to be contextual. But if you act in a respectful manner, you're not going to worry about it anyway. You're not going to be left wondering, well, am I saying this right? Am I acting the right way? Like, it's never going to come to your mind, We were asked about some specifics, like examples, and I posted an example in the topic. It's out there, like the difference between, non-ban-worthy posts, critique, criticism. If you're criticizing us or the contests, by all means, that's totally fine. Some of the posts that are ban-worthy, it's like someone straight up said to me when I was trying to ask for a correction to an entry to be more in line with rules. Quote, I believe you are being told to step off, sir, and not make this unnecessarily difficult. Somebody else posted, coward. Yeah. I think it's
organizer of the contest, person who makes rules, person who administers rules, people who runs the contest infrastructure, asks for rule to be enforced, gives entry a chance to correct it. Step off, coward.
Awesome. Okay. We're not doing that.
That's probably not gonna fly. Just saying.
Yeah. So it's like it's pretty clear what you can and cannot do.
Yeah.
If you just act like a normal person, it's not really that hard.
More or less.
So that was that. We also, because this came from like a lot of this over that 2-week period, like when Meso and I were like looking at the art entries to try and get things going and get the polls up. Like, I was asking for corrections to be made to certain entries to bring them more in line with things, and I had missed a bunch of others. And it's there's like nothing else to say. It's not like I saw them and excused them. They got missed. Because we're trying to get these polls up. We're trying to vet entries where we can. And it's like, it just got missed. That's it. There's no like grand plot behind it. It's unfortunate. It was a mistake, and people jumped on me for it. They were like, you're trying to get this changed, but you're allowing all of these. What about this one? What about this one? We had one guy who was like, you clearly don't know what you're doing. What about all these that you missed? And I was like, oh well, we would really appreciate a list. If you could like point them out to us, like that would be awesome. We don't know which ones you're talking about specifically. He's like, not my job, not my responsibility. You aren't being diligent in your efforts. It's like, okay, well, thanks for nothing. This person then went on to make their own list pointing out errors and issues that they found. Like,
yeah.
If you were going to do it anyway, why not just work with us in the first place? Like, why not just be like, yeah, sure, that'd be awesome. I'd be happy to help, because it's a community thing.
Because it perpetuates the narrative, and like, I mean, I don't want to make a public spectacle of it, but like, people have already like memed in Discord servers that like we didn't call this person out. I just want to say the person's name. Is that chill?
Go for it. They're a jerk.
Okay. The person's name is Subpar Faux Pas. They are the person who made the Qualis mock, which I like very much, and I did vote for. They also go by like iBunny. I think they were in our chat earlier. They're right here. They're right here, literally, in the chat. So the issue is, and I've talked with them about this in the Reddit Discord server. Like, we've had a few conversations, and the thing I try to make clear is like, okay, so the issue is less about anything that was done or wasn't done. It's about the vibe, it's about the intent, and it's about the presumption of an attitude. The issue isn't TTV has done something that we disagree with, and so we'd like to get them to change it. We'd like to make it clear to them or whatever. The issue is it's the propagation of a narrative, and it's having talks in like, in bad faith or with an attitude that we are incompetent, and so the conversation should be approached by that angle. So what I mean is, you use the example. Hey, there's a list. You ask for help. They're like, I don't want to help. They then decide to help otherwise, and then meme in the Discord servers about how like, well, I already made them a list. Why do they need auditors if I already have a list? Well, it's because the purpose of the list clearly wasn't to actually, help. I don't want to presume intent,
No.
iBunny, subpar. If you want to clarify, feel free. But like, the issue stems from the fact that the purpose of the list is just to like mock or make fun of us or be derisive, to perpetuate the TTV are incompetent morons who can't do anything narrative, and to just have a laugh instead of actually trying to be constructive. Yeah. And that's where it starts to like grate a little bit. Because it's like, so we're very cognizant of the fact that there have been screw ups, and we're cognizant of the fact that it's too much of a burden for us entirely. Obviously it is. Obviously we're not perfect because of the double situation. And in the event that persists, we're going around trying to catch all the issues and all the things that need to be changed. But instead of actually having a constructive community assistance in that vein, I feel like the narrative too often was just, let's make fun of TTV's overly strict rules. Which, there's a discussion to be had there, specifically directing it towards iBunny. Again, not trying to call out, but just to like address, give credit where credit is due.
Your publics are your comments are public,
more or less, and we've had discussions. Me and iBunny in particular, subpar. I don't know what name you want to be called by, but like, we had the discussions in the format feedback topic specifically, and you were responsible directly for making changes to some rules. Some major, some minor. I remember the flex chord one being one. Ultimately, it falls on the minor end, but it was like, you said, hey, this is handled in a weird way. I think this could be handled in a better way that's more clear. We were like, fair enough. We changed it. There were others. You made a big list, and I felt it was very helpful because it was a big list. And that was an instance of like, okay, it's in the contest off season. It is the time when we're actually addressing feedback. You wrote up a very respectful, detailed post. Your rules have flaws. Here's why. Here's what you should change them to. And we did. And everything was peachy, and it was happy times. But now there was this bleed over where instead of trying to engage in that conversation, constructively, you and others, not just you, there was a contingent. It was more of like, well, let's just make fun of TTV. And ultimately, that's your call. Humor is subjective. You do whatever you want to do. The Discord servers that keep like running tallies of all our drama, that's totally chill. That's within your right to do if that's what brings you enjoyment.
Which, okay.
But it's your call, If people do this, they have like the running TTV drama tally. What happened this week? What crazy decisions did TTV make this week? But mid-contest, after entries have already been entered, isn't the time to deliberate the specifics of individual rules. It's the time to make sure they're enforced equally, even if you think they're granular and even if you think they're unnecessary. And then if you have issue with them, presented in the next contest. I remember there was one specific issue where you asked for the color of like the scarf to be changed.
That's the specific
to be more
instance
to the set.
Yeah.
That's a specific instance. Does that rank in like the top 5 of issues or rule adherence? Not really. But is it the kind of thing that someone somewhere out there would give us grief for if we missed it when we applied logic to something else? Yes, it is, which is why it had to be handled, even if it seems overtly specific. And in the interest of being fair, iBunny posts this. It says, it was at first a genuine attempt to help and lay out everything that you guys missed that I noticed. Needed something in place for the, quote, fan polls, too, which is something else. People in their impatience, justifiably impatience. They did their own, like, fan polls on Reddit. And I'm going to be honest, I don't want to, like, belittle anyone's efforts, but, like, I didn't even know that was going on.
I knew they were going on, but we weren't going to pay attention to them.
I think we coincidentally made that topic, like, a day after they were going on or something.
Yeah, it wasn't in response or in relation to them literally at all. It had nothing to do with them.
But I think it lined up that way, which is kind of funny. iBunny says, if y'all check out the rest of the doc, there was a lot more constructive criticism there, too, than the little quips sprinkled in. This is true. That's why I'm going out of my way to recognize it's not like you're incapable of being constructive. You have been in the past. It's when you're not that it's noticeable.
Yeah, it's when you choose to be particularly, I don't know, underscore doubly, that you lose your credibility and your standing, and we're not inclined to listen to you because we can't be sure that it's in good faith or if you're playing an angle.
More or less.
And that's why this kind of matters. That's why this is important.
Yeah, and I mean, you and I have had conversations. You've made your points very clear, and you're entitled to feel the way you do. But I mean, like, that's just kind of from our perspective how it comes across at times. I know Eljay definitely felt that way in his interaction. And I mean, I've observed, I'm in the servers, the amount of people that like roast about like everything they don't agree with, every instance of a very hyper-specific rule, which can be very hyper-specific, but they're usually for a reason. They're usually to anticipate an outrage or a loophole, or to try to catch something that, someone would give us grief about later. Stuff like that demands thought, and it's when we don't properly enforce it, people can use it as fodder later on to like get at us.
Yeah.
So,
and it's like it's not worth doing this. Like, sorry, I mean the behavior, like, sorry, yeah, behavior isn't worth it.
Yeah, I agree. We have a super chat from 26K down the drain, $5. This is controversy about a fandom contest about a wiki photo for a defunct toy line from over a decade ago. Y'all calm down. Super chat.
Missed you.
I mean, I agree. Missed you, man. Thank you for coming up. And ultimately, I agree. Like, we're talking about this stuff, but like, we're propagating the hyper-specific, detail-oriented, granular nitpicking as much as the next person. I don't claim that anything we do is 100% justified. It's just from our perspectives. And it's just what the community is. It's inherently very detailed and very hyper-specific.
Yeah.
Cameron Miller makes a funny comment. He says, not to be snarky, but and an attorney, I guess he means as an attorney, this portion of the discussion just makes me think of court discussion of Fuel's good faith enforcement.
Oh yeah, we'll get to other court-related similarities pretty soon.
Yeah, we should I think it's time because this directly bridges, doesn't it, into the Dramarama Fest?
I think just to kind of cap this up, to make a point clear to everyone, we're not in the business of shutting down discussion or conversation, and we're not in the business of shutting down people that disagree with us or dislike us. We don't do that. Anyone can say whatever they want. They can make whatever point that they want to make. If they want to say they don't like the contests, fair enough. If they're pointing out things that they don't like that we're doing, fair enough. That's fine. We don't shut that down. But when you go out of your way to act like a bad person, or to try and attack other people, or just try and be disruptive, or try and make life harder for everyone, we don't have any patience for you. You are not welcome. And that sounds harsh, but do better. So,
yeah.
And in that post, we also said that, we needed help, and we have accepted applications for contest auditors. We'll get into them a little bit later. And that is actually going to be a huge, huge improvement moving forward. But let's get into the other big thing, because, Meso, I think you're talking about the court.
No.
The trial? You're not talking about trial? You're talking about Judas?
I am talking about the Judas, which is what directly happened as a result of us making this topic.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and put his picture up.
Oh, are you going to do that?
Well, we're going to talk about him.
Fair enough.
And you know what?
So,
Judas, I hope you hear this, because you didn't want to talk about it before, so maybe you'll hear it now.
Bruh. All right, well.
So this is our
here's the thing.
This is our former member Keaney.
Yeah, otherwise known as Hawkeye in the community.
Otherwise known as Judas.
Oh my god. All right. Yeah, but you're entitled to feel that way. That's
I do feel that way because he decided to blame all of his feelings and behaviors on us. So go ahead and kick us off, Meso.
So here's the situation. There has been a situation that has been going on in the back half of this contest, and it's mostly been handled privately. Mostly. So if anybody only really cares about the contest results, the contest handling, and like what it means for going forward, this is probably your cue to tune out.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about a little bit more. We're going to talk about the resolution to the art contest and all that. The talk we had with the Mask of Destiny Council, if you've heard of that, the survey they did. But really, this is going to be the big bulk of what we have left to talk about. And it results in a lot of private, interpersonal drama, which normally I would not deign to discuss in a public atmosphere, but which was unfortunately brought into the public atmosphere in a really weird and like uncalled for way.
Mm-hmm.
And people have been asking, like, when are you ever going to reply? You said you were going to reply. Are you going to address it? I feel like it's best to address it here.
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier the contests were primarily staffed by me and Eljay, but that there was an exception. That exception was Keaney Hawkeye. Keaney, some of you know him, some of you don't. People who are in the community know him more than people who watch the channel because he's never been a active member on the channel. But Keaney was one of our original members way back when he was actually on IBZP before TTV ever started. He's rarely ever appeared in channel content since that point, but he has done behind the scenes stuff from time to time. Notably, the most active he was ever involved in our operations was actually during the Canon contests, where he did help, to give him credit. He did assist, he did moderate, he did like outreach to other BIONICLE Discord servers with a big asterisk there, about what that outreach exactly was, but he did do it, and that is deserving of appreciation, and we did appreciate it because it was kind of cool that somebody who traditionally hadn't been that active in our group would be at a time when we needed help And it was also kind of a way for him to get into the community more. And he did use it as a springboard too. A lot of people only really started to know about Keaney as a result of the contests, because he would position himself in Discord servers to be like, yo, I'm the guy you can talk to if you have questions. I'm the guy to do like a personable spin. I'm the guy who will like tell you how it really is. I'm not gonna talk to you in PR speak. I'm the cool hip member of TTV who isn't afraid to call Meso and Eljay a-holes. Oh, the plot twist. You know, that the outreach may have had some ulterior motives. So Keaney had been of help behind the scenes and also publicly. He had been posting and moderating on the message boards. And early on in June, he resigned. And he resigned very suddenly. He didn't tell us that this was going to happen. He had kind of dropped off from talking in our private chats, which wasn't really a surprise because Keaney's shtick was that he would like disappear for long stretches and then just come back randomly.
In all honesty, we've known him for about 12 years. We've probably interacted with him for about 6 because, like, no exaggeration, he would be gone for half a year at a time, every time, and only really come back when drama happened.
Yeah, that kind of like pulled him back in. And we'd make fun of him for that, you know, lighthearted barbs between friends, like the 9-month departures. But nobody ever really, like, we understood, right? Like, we kind of got it. You know, he wasn't as tuned into our channel as anybody else was. He has other things going on in his life. So we didn't really think anything of it when he just disappeared. We were like, this is just par for the course. This is just Keaney. He'll be back at some point, and he'll help us with the contest and stuff if he wants to. He'd have been a help with our Taka. But no, June 12th, he suddenly drops a statement, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to resign. You know, I made this choice by myself. I am parting with TTV in good faith, quote. And I have worked to ensure that my departure will have the least effect possible on the boards. And then he extols about how, you know, proud he is of the community. And he deliberately, like, mentions how he's going to be, like, getting in with the other acronyms in the fandom, quote unquote. Essentially saying, like, hey, I'm leaving TTV, but I'm not leaving the BIONICLE community.
Yeah, I'm going to go hang out with the other alphabet soup groups.
Did you hear a word from this about him, Eljay?
Absolutely not.
When was the last time you spoke to Keaney?
Let me find out.
Obviously, DM might not be a good thing because I know we talked in group chat a lot, but when did you last speak to Keaney? You know, like on a one-on-one level. I'm just curious.
Don't remember. It was after Brick Fair 2019.
Yeah,
but not by my like. It was a long time.
It was
ago.
definite. It was last year. That much I know, because there's a talk that we had that will be referenced later that happened in December of 2020, and since then, I don't think either of us have really spoke to him much. Me more than you, because he'll message me about like Destiny and stuff. But he just kind of vanished after a while, only to drop this resignation letter. Now, this was a surprise, but ultimately, at the time, it wasn't a big deal. I remember you and I discussed it, and we were like, he's leaving, but like, I mean, it's whatever, ultimately. You know, if he feels like it was more stressful than not, it's not like we can't sympathize, considering our own feelings. If we didn't hold ill will towards Vin or Var or any of our friends for not willing to help, by being willing to help, we weren't going to hold any towards Keaney, especially not after he had helped.
Yeah.
He had been of help to us. So he wanted to leave. We kind of wish he'd talked to us, just as like a friendly thing to do, because, you know, if you think about the perception of him leaving, like, it's very clearly framed as like, oh, this is a message to the community. This is a PR message. This is a PR spin. It's not a thing you'd send to a friend. It's not a thing to give your friends a heads up, or even like your project partners. It's something you drop to the public, and there's a reason for that. That's an action done intentionally. So it kind of raised our eyebrows, but ultimately not a big deal. Months go by before we even hear about him again. He messages me occasionally about Destiny, but ultimately that's the end of it. And then he replies to our post talking about how we need help and about how the reason for the artwork portion being delayed was due to mental health strain. And I am going to read his post for transparency.
Read it in its entirety?
I think I might.
Okay, in that case,
if it goes too long, I'm going to cut it.
I'm going to be right back while you do that.
Do it. So Keaney says this, for full transparency, so nothing gets lost in translation. Okay, here goes nothing. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the both of you on finally making a well overdue statement and being honest about some things. However, we all know what a PR statement looks like at this point, and I'd like to point out a few, shall we say, inconsistencies. First off, well done on taking a stance with regards to the vitriol that's been spilled throughout this process. I do hope that, in addition to concerns issued by others in this topic, you also intend to hold yourselves to the same standards. I have seen and heard plenty of comments on both sides that I'd be hard-pressed to say I agree with or support. Second off, I want to address the fact that you need help. You had help. I ran myself ragged for over a year, helping while working 4 jobs, going to school full-time, opening and then closing, and then opening again my own business, and working on my relationship with my partner. In fact, I suggested that help was necessary over a year ago, well prior to the conversation in December/January. I point this out because what you're attempting to do now was completely shut down then, and ultimately not even considered. I even had a whole plan drawn up that ultimately I didn't bother to share because it was evident at the time that it was unwelcome. So what's changed? Surely the passage of time from June to now didn't come with such world-shattering changes that the need for some actual assistance makes sense now when it didn't after Artaka? And more importantly, what are the criteria you're looking for? Because I'm going to be perfectly brutally honest, if you want people that you trust implicitly, you're never going to get the help you want. You don't even trust your own moderation team. More to the point, these contests have been plagued with issues, both internal and external. Forgive me if I have little sympathy for 2 people who refused to get help when it was offered up on a silver platter and then complained that they're too busy to do it alone. You specifically asked for this, and while I am thankful that you've at least recognized the damage to your mental health that it's caused, I am leery of relieving you of the responsibility that you took on. This contest should have been done months ago. This contest was supposed to be done before the end of summer. The only reason this contest isn't done now is because the 2 of you either consciously or unconsciously decided to ignore it completely. You decided that the bare minimum was too difficult, and you can't say on one hand that all the vitriol and negativity came from around 10 people, which was a statement that Eljay made on the topic, and then also claim that there was so much of it that it took a toll on your mental health. There's always 10 people who will make you angry on a given day. Today I'm one of them. Lastly, let's address the elephant in the room, the future of the contests. I'll be the first to admit that I don't support these contests. I never have, but I also recognize the importance of doing them right if they were going to happen. I recall a refrain of, once we have a baseline for how these can go, welcome back, being used repeatedly to justify continuing to the next contest with the bare minimum introspection and review. I'd also argue that given the current state of this, what was supposed to be easy contest where all the kinks were, quote, worked out, Hagah contest, the baseline has been set, and it's not good. There's no amount of help that you can get that will suddenly make fundamental issues with how you've approached these contests go away. You want to host community contests, you'd best be ready to be heavily involved, not just with posting polls, but with interacting with the community. The fact that an hour or 2 couldn't be set aside for a whole month multiple times means that you're not even mentally ready to run the contests in the first place. Sure, we got a cool Artaka, but at the end of the day, these contests on the basis of we'll try 3 and then decide if they're worth continuing are a resounding failure. Make no mistake, I respect losing your drive because of people being loud and angry and vitriolic, but if that were the case, then take action. You're the administrators of the boards. If there are people specifically treating you like crap, take action. It's not that hard to enforce your own rules, especially when the boards come with a built-in dictatorship clause. These problems could have been solved a year ago. Let me just be abundantly clear. I want these contests to continue, but only if they're done right. Ultimately, I have very little faith they can be done right at this point without a complete change in management style. If you're willing to do more than just arbitrate rules and eventually make polls, then maybe. But if you're waiting for a whitelist of people you specifically trust, who tick all your boxes, to come in and run the contests for you, do us all a favor and admit defeat. They're a cool idea that maybe you're just not equipped to handle. Either let the greater community help run them or abandon the idea until life is stabilized enough that you can devote the time required. I'll end by saying that I do genuinely hope everything works out and that these statements are genuine rather than PR drivel. Ultimately, I intended to justify failing to administrate these contests. I do hope things get better moving forward, and I hope that if there are future contests to be had, they run with the requisite care and attention. But I do also hope that the option of stepping back and recognizing that for one reason or another, continuing them isn't tenable is on the table, because if it's not a legitimate consideration, all that says is you're willing to drag the entire fandom down with you because the next one will be better. If the first three were objectively poorly run, then the common denominator is the two of you, not the amount of help you had. And whether that means getting more help solves the problem, whether the problem is simply that you've bitten off more than you can chew, I don't know, but I do genuinely hope there's been enough introspection to identify which for all our sakes. Keaney's outline is very scathing, it's very critical, but it's founded in a dressed up, shiny bow. It's founded in the basis of, here's criticism, you guys suck, but hopefully you can do better. And it's that hopefully you can do better that he dresses it all in, to the point where if I just saw this post in a vacuum, we would address it and we'd move on, and it really wouldn't be an issue. But it's not the post in a vacuum that's the problem. And this is the frustrating part, is because he mentions a lot of things in this post that are very difficult to dispute without airing like personal laundry or personal DM conversations, which I would never do. Unfortunately, he's not so honorable, as we'll get to, because he shared private screenshots of him and I to prove points or whatever. But like his points about how we categorically denied any and all requests for help. Well, that's easy to say in a vacuum, and it's easy to say when the other person isn't going to post, the receipts from your private conversations or the 6 different voice calls that weren't recorded where you debate the logistics of the issue. But Keaney and us, and Keaney and I, had multiple conversations about our need for help. And it was about what kind of help that would be and the format in which we wanted to do it. Keaney's idea was to bring in people who either actively dislike us or people who are in groups that categorically, traditionally, do have a distaste for us, and bring on a contest moderating staff of people, from all walks of the community. Some people who are message board users, some people who are people who hate TTV, some people who are on the Reddit server and just think we're clowns, etc. And so doing, by having a balanced, quote unquote, council of people, we could make, judgments that were fair or whatever. And our points to him were, so what are you going to do if you bring on someone who represents a group? Number one, it acts as another shadow council, which Sakota posts. It'd be like, the proposal was essentially to create a second council that already exists, made specifically to seek feedback on contest arbitrations, but comprised of people who expressly are negative or have been negative towards us. And our concern was like, well, what if we bring on people from groups who have like vested agendas, against some of our rules?
Yeah, you're just gonna gridlock any progress because we're gonna be spent arguing with them and trying to like get them to see where we're coming from, and they're not gonna be paying any attention because they actively won't want to. It's like all of the people that 343 brought into Halo 4 and 5 that didn't like Halo, so that they could make a new experience. Well, guess how those Halos ended up?
the quote from Frank O'Connor, we hired people who hate Halo.
Yeah.
we hired people who hate TTV. And I mean, look, I'm okay with hearing opinions from people who disagree with our rules, but as far as I'm concerned, we were already doing that publicly. So the need for a moderation staff isn't to delineate or deliberate rules. The moderation staff is to enforce the rules that have already been decided. And we would decide those by public discourse, or we would decide those by public, whatever. And again, like, I don't claim to know Keaney's full idea, because a lot of the conversations I had with him about it were him telling his ideas to me in a voice call. I would respond and say, you have interesting ideas. I get what you're saying. I have some concerns, because I would ideally like to bring on people who would operate in good faith and enforce the rules. But this is interesting. We should explore this. I'm not sure who exactly you have in mind, but I'd like to hear it. You should pitch it to LJ, and we'll get him involved and we'll hash out some specifics, because I'm just going to have to repeat your idea to LJ. And he's like, no, I don't want to talk to LJ. Because Keaney had this weird stigma where he would just not want to talk to you. And I don't know when this fully developed.
I don't know.
But he seemed to genuinely believe, or maybe not, I don't know, but I think it was genuine, that you would just reject any idea he had out of turn without even listening to it.
And I don't know why.
Which isn't true, because he's been a part of making decisions.
Yeah.
And, if Keaney says things unilaterally, I'm allowed to do that too. So I'll bring up the, if you ever listen to this, Keaney, the multiple months where I tried to get you in voice calls to hash out rules because you had criticized how we handled our rules. And I was like, okay, for this next contest, for our Taka way back when, would you like to get involved? Would you like to join our voice calls? You want to join call to hash out the rules? Would you like to join calls to hash out the Hagah rules? And every single time he'd say no. And sometimes they were valid reasons. Sometimes he'd be like, I'm busy. I'm at work. I'm with my girlfriend. I'm doing this stuff. I'm doing that stuff. But at the same time, I'm just like, okay, so you've been critical about our rules. I want to make you more a part of the planning process. I want to get you in our conversations. You reject being in every one of our conversations, and you vent the rough ideas of an outline of our ideas to me in voice calls when we're playing video games and just chatting as friends, but you reject the idea of talking in a more formal atmosphere and actually drafting a pitch. So at what point am I just to throw my hands up in the air, be like, well, are you engaging in this constructively? And I told him as much. I was like, no, you need to talk to LJ. I don't care what personal beef you have with LJ. I'd like to ideally clear it up, but LJ and I are a partnership. You can't get your ideas through by just convincing me, because just like LJ doesn't do things unilaterally without running them by me, I'm not going to do things without running them by him. And I'm not going to be able to pitch your idea as clearly as you could, because it's your idea. Why don't you just pitch your idea?
Hey, he won't listen.
So why? You won't listen, eh? Why didn't we get help? Because we had different ideas on how the help could be done. I've said this already. I wanted people who approached on good faith. He wanted people who would literally approach on bad faith or would be skeptics, which I was willing to entertain the idea of. I was willing to hear who he had in mind, but it never got to that point. Sakota says, see, we need a council that talks to the council that talks to Meso to talk to LJ. More or less!
You can be a part of that council, Sakota.
That's what was being proposed, basically.
That was ridiculous.
It's not like he didn't help. It's not like he didn't have ideas. But what he lacked was the follow through on those ideas.
Yeah.
He didn't develop them. He didn't pitch them. And he had this weird personal block about talking to you. And this is where it awkwardly blends, and why I'm infuriated that we're having to have this conversation publicly, because now it gets into like friendship stuff.
Yeah.
You know, you see how linked it is? He didn't talk to you. Why? It's not because of contest stuff. It's because of friendship stuff. And how do we discuss that publicly without like outing like friendship stuff, which really isn't anybody's business?
Yeah. And that's even how we responded to it at the time. Like, we told everyone, hey, so we'll respond to Keaney eventually. But right now, it's very, like, it's personal friendship stuff that we don't want to talk about publicly. We want to try and talk to him privately first and come to a resolution before we go forward so that we can handle it as friends and not out in the public eye where we have all these spectators and this audience of people watching as we deal with our friend and talk to our friend. And
yeah,
it's like people didn't seem to jive with that. They didn't seem that that's not what they wanted. They wanted the public. They were like, oh yeah, sure. You're just not gonna talk to him. You're just not gonna respond. You're just gonna hide behind wall. It's like, no, it's not appropriate to talk about friend stuff to your friend out in public, like is what he did.
What do you want me to do? Do you want me to reply to Keaney, or did Keaney want me to reply to him and be like, well, here's an itemized Imgur gallery of all the voice calls we've had, you know, private and in TTV group DM, and a 62% ratio of those were about contest stuff. And here's the chat logs where I tell you to talk to LJ, and your response being like, he won't listen to me, you know, yada yada yada. Like, that's the kind of conversation that would quickly become.
Yeah,
and that's not fruitful for anybody. He made some points. He made some, I hesitate to call them good points, but like some of his points could be replied to. You know, like, what changed? In his eyes, nothing changed to make us decide we need help. But as we've already said, a lot changed. A lot happened in that time period, which, of course, he doesn't understand or relate to because he wasn't there. He was on one of his, 6 to 9 month absences, and he missed the Sakota set reveal, and he missed all the stress with LJ's video, and he missed the magnitude of the comments getting us down, and he missed the almost 3,000 message open forum discussion topics and all the rule deliberations and the staying up till 4 a.m. writing response essays. He missed all that. So of course in his eyes nothing would change. But a lot did.
no.
We thought we could fix what happened with Helrix and Artaka by being more open and communicative, and by addressing rules publicly and having them get changed and take away some of the restrictive rules. And it kind of worked, but it also just opened more problems, and it started to wear on us. And that's when we came to slowly realize, yeah, we're failing with just the two of us. That's what changed. And during this time period, he dipped. He wasn't that active anymore. He would post sometimes, but not that often, and he certainly stopped being a part of our discussions. He just vanished. And like I said earlier, if this was just the post, it wouldn't be an issue, but it wasn't, because then we found out about, servers and stuff.
Yeah.
Where, come to find out, Keaney had been talking in, a bunch of BIONICLE servers, which isn't a crime, but like all that outreach, he was doing, all the outreach more or less boils down to, at least from what I've seen, yeah, Meso and Eljay are kind of incompetent. LJ's kind of like a dictator. LJ's a scumbag. LJ sucks. LJ makes no sense. LJ is hard to talk to. But I'm the cool one. You can talk to me about your problems. You can talk to me about your issues, and I'll make sure, they get hurt. And yeah, TTV sucks, but I mean, I'm a part of it. So, I care about it too, kind of, and I want to see it done well, even if they are stupid, imbecilic morons over there. And it's kind of disingenuous, like he's allowed to feel that way. But at some point, as being the dude's friend for like literally like how long's it been?
13, 14 years?
13 years that I have known him. 13 years. Over half of my life I have been friends with Keaney Hawkeye. It would have been nice to like, I don't know, have a little bit more open communication. And he had the most communication with me out of anyone. He didn't talk to LJ about anything.
Yep.
I at least knew that he was annoyed, and I kept trying to convince him to, be open about his annoyances. But he never would to LJ. So, LJ, do you want to talk about what happened to you as a direct result of this?
Yeah, let's talk about the slander campaign that was launched against me.
Yeah, because his post was day 1. Then day 2, we had reached out like, hey, we should talk about this. And he ignored me, and he would just post like in public servers and reply to me. Like he literally he posted I sent him a private message. I was like, hey man, let's talk about this. If not as TTVers, as friends. And instead of replying to my DM, he was posting in the public RSG server going like, yeah, I have nothing to say to them, really. If I had wanted to handle it privately, I would have. I wanted to call him out publicly. I just wanted to do it. I just felt like it. And yes, at Mesodac, I saw your message. I'll reply when I'm out of class. But you can reply now. You're only doing it publicly to showboat.
Yeah.
So then a day goes by while we wait, and then on day 3, take it away.
So, come to find out, a couple of things have been happening. One, Keaney was all buddying up with some groups that actively, like, their existence is just to harass us. And I've kind of chronologically never named them here because I don't want to give them the attention. They know they're going to listen to this because they listen to all that we do because they are, at their core, unhealthily obsessed with us. Now, I say that, like, I am, like, concerned that they have an unhealthy obsession because they constantly monitor everything we do and then make their own content about it to criticize us and cause us grief and then go out of their way to spread rumors and falsities about us to cause us issues. It's just a deplorable group. Just absolutely, like, they're terrible. Absolutely, genuinely, they need to find better hobbies or better uses for their time. It's unhealthy. Well, he'd been buddying up with them, and a couple of narratives had started to run. One of which was that he was the reason that the Artaka contest went so well, and because he had basically run it. That's not true. Meso and I ran it as usual. And in addition to that, Keaney was the actual, like, of the small controversies we had, Keaney was the direct cause for one of the larger ones from the Artaka contest. He had pushed through, we were trying to get the polls up. He had made the polls, with incorrect code and posted them before any of our standardized vetting of the entries had been done. So an entry made it through that would not have made it through without a correction. And then the poll, like, all of the coding was wrong. It was not the right coding that we use for the polls to make them run the way that we need to.
Yep.
And so I had to take the polls down to redo the code and vet the entries because he had jumped the gun. And I have evidence of this. I think I posted it publicly. It should be on the board somewhere, but he posted them all up, and I had to take them down. And one of the entries, again, it wouldn't have made it through. So,
it created a public spectacle.
It created a public spectacle we had to get the polls up because they were up and now they're gone, so we have to act quickly, and we had to disqualify the entry. Where otherwise,
and you want to know why he did it that way? It's because he was probably glued in to all the Discord servers, like making fun of us and criticizing us, and going like, "Where are the polls? Where are the polls? Where are the polls?" So he was just like, "I'll just make them myself," because clearly they're not gonna do it.
mm-hmm.
Instead of like communicating with us about it, because he's like so tapped into that negative feedback loop. He either thought it would like show us, or it would help him get cred in the servers where those like things were being said.
Yeah. So it just caused major problems, and was
so that was narrative
difficult.
one, that he like ran the Artaka contest, which he did help. He was a public moderator, but all of the infrastructure, all of the decision making, all of the planning, since he abstained from being a part of a lot of the planning calls, all of that was done by us. The most he did was offer opinions on some things when he actually bothered to show up and make posts, which he did do, and we did appreciate him doing. And I don't want to belittle that he did do that, but like just factually, like, you know, he did not run the contests. What were the other narratives?
The other one was this narrative that had been started about me and my opinions on the BIONICLE community.
Yes.
Didn't appreciate this one because
LJ, you're a filthy maggot.
Yeah. So he went on to say that I had said that the BIONICLE community were maggots and that they were not worth dealing with. Yeah, and so this was his claim, and he spread this to anyone that had an ear, which includes the aforementioned sorry group of TTV obsessionists.
But that's not true, LJ. If you believe him, he only spread it to a group of trusted friends.
That's right.
Who betrayed his confidence.
That's right. I forgot about that.
I mean, it might be true, but the result's ultimately the same thing.
Yeah, he claimed that he talked to a few people in confidence, and they went to the group of sorry TTV obsessionists.
There is a difference, but ultimately the result is the same.
Yeah. Yeah. So the claim was that in a voice call with him and Meso, I was angry, and I said that the BIONICLE community were maggots that were beneath me, and that they were not worth my time, and that I was above them, and to that effect. So let me get this straight. This is the narrative that had been spun. Instead, apparently, according to him, I felt this way. So this occurred over a year ago, like around the Hagah contest. Or sorry, not the Hagah contest, around the Artaka contest, thank you. So if I felt that way, obviously, what I would do is go on to continue hosting the contests for the BIONICLE community and making physically and mentally grueling and draining videos for the community and moderating these contests, which have already caused me so much stress and strife, instead of just not
stopping.
That's the narrative that got spun. So for anyone listening, just so everyone's aware, I don't actually think that. I don't actually think that the BIONICLE community are maggots that are beneath me. All of that we've been doing has been for the community. That's the point. Like, I obviously don't believe that at all. Do I get frustrated with aspects of the community, given our experience as of the last couple of years? Certainly. But at no point do I have this weird superiority complex over the community. It's just not true. Like, I don't feel that way. And if I felt that way, then I wouldn't still be here. As Meso can attest, I have no tolerance for a status quo that is not good. I will always be striving to try and get to a better situation. Like, I'm always trying to move to a better place. Like, I'm never ever trying to just stagnantly stay still and just deal with something. So this narrative that got spun, obviously people took it and ran with it. It's like, look at this. First of all, don't throw don't throw stones in glass houses. I can assure you that is by far not the worst thing that anyone has ever said about anyone or the BIONICLE community behind closed doors. Mm-hmm. Second of all, no, I do not actually feel that way. Third of all, just to address it, I did say something along those lines. But again, it was not in that context. It was after we were dealing with a significant deal of stress, more hecklers, and I was specifically referring to people that were like actively going out of their way to cause us grief and stress and irritation. And I was mad.
But Eljay, it's very convenient to paint a narrative by generalizing an entire community. You know? So of course it sounds better that you would be saying that about everyone.
Of course.
Instead of the group of problem people who make our lives a living hell and who are so blatantly toxic and horrible to not just us, but the community at large. Yeah. To where, yeah, I'll back you up. If they disappeared from the community tomorrow and we all got back to just having fun with the hobby, the world would be a better place.
Yeah.
But there's a spectrum to it, right? There's levels.
And even still, I speak hyperbolically, especially when I'm in places where I'm surrounded by close, trusted friends who I know don't actually take those words seriously. They know I'm venting. They know I'm angry. They know that I'm stressed. They know that I don't actually feel those things. Like, they know that I don't actually think poorly of the community and that I'm not trying to mess with them or do anything untoward to anyone. I'm just angry and frustrated, and I want to vent, and I want to be hyperbolic because it's a form of stress relief. So no, this narrative that I think I'm so much better than everyone is false. It's wrong. It is not true, and I'm tired of hearing about it. I don't actually believe that. I don't think it's true for a second.
Well, it's also funny because, like, there's so much nuance that Keaney, of all people, having known you for so long, should know. Mm-hmm. It's not only the fact that you talk hyperbolically. It's not only the fact that you were under such stress and strain. It's also the fact that you're Eljay, you're Mr. I don't swear, you're Mr. You contort your words to be funny or like dodge around. Like plenty of people throw around things like, oh, people are insert swear word here, or these guys are real a-holes, a more colorful variant of a-holes. And Eljay is the man who's, you know, one of his chief exclamations of frustration over the years is, son of a flying fish taco. You speak extravagantly using like weird vocabulary. Yeah. So it sounds really bad to use Eljay called people maggots, but like it's an equivalent word for someone who doesn't swear.
Yeah. And so of course when Keaney goes and it's like, I lost all respect for Eljay that day. It's like, first of all, Keaney, you've always seen me through the prism of me as a kid. You've never grown out of that. Get over yourself. Just stop it. Just stop. You never had respect. Obviously, through these actions. Like, you've never actually tried to look past anything and try and, you know, grow up. And further, this went around, and people started using this as a way to attack us, and a way to attack me, and this, you know, this narrative started
because of
going
course
around.
it sounds great. It sounds like a gotcha. Oh, Eljay secretly hates everyone and thinks they're dirt on his shoe. Oh, we could totally run with this.
Oh yeah, and people
and like
did.
ultimately, whether it was Keaney who spoke to certain Bionicle fan groups, or whether Keaney spoke to somebody who spoke to somebody who spoke to somebody who spoke to somebody who spoke to the fan groups, it doesn't matter, because it was still like it was a private thing that was deliberately taken out of context.
Yeah.
Like, that's not cool. Like, regardless of the fact that it's drama pandering, it's also just not cool for like a friend to do. Like, we were Keaney's friend for like 13 years. And like Sharnak points out, how many people actually took that comment at face value? It may not paint a flattering picture, but even out of context, I knew it was hyperbole. That's the thing. A lot of people do have brains. I'm in a lot of the servers, and I was telling LJ, like, most people see the sense of it. Most people, they don't take it too seriously. They might think it's funny to like meme about, but like, it's understandable. A hyperbolic comment made during a moment of frustration. So it was less about like, oh no, LJ's reputation is going to get murdered, but it was more about just like the act of doing it and like how that made us feel. Because I then later went on to find out that Keaney had been like posting screenshots of him and I's DMs in servers to like, I don't know, make fun of the fact that he was like sending walls of text about rule suggestions for the contests, but he conveniently leaves out, the follow-up message or the prior message that tells that he was like ambushing me when I was busy doing something else. I was like watching a freaking movie, or I was playing a game with somebody, and it propagates the narrative, like, from his perspective, oh, Meso sends one-word replies to me because he's busy, but it leaves out the context of like he's busy, and also Keaney ignored like the 5 other times I tried to approach him to talk. So it wasn't so much that like Keaney destroyed your reputation, but more that like he was actively trying, and it just kind of stung a little.
Yeah. It's like,
it shouldn't be done.
Yeah.
And he apparently, like, for what it's worth, it's hard for me to say, but I do think that he legitimately took you seriously. Somehow.
I don't get it.
I think he's got in his own head that you are a certain way, and so he will seize at whatever things could paint you in a certain way, instead of realizing, hey, I know LJ, and I've been his friend supposedly for like 12, 13 years. He doesn't actually feel this way. But it's more convenient to fit the narrative he has of you. Because in all his messages, he's like, no, that like seriously offended me. I knew that seriously offended him because he messaged me about it. And you know what I told him? I was like, talk to LJ. That was hyperbolic. He doesn't actually mean that. He was talking about a specific contingent of people. And he's like, no, he was talking about everyone. I know it. And no, I don't want to talk to him. It is what it is. And I was like, okay, cool. Come to find out later on, that was the catalyst for him losing all respect. Which seems like a bit of a stretch, but I digress.
Yeah, that's because it all is. And, yeah, it's very frustrating.
He never did agree to talk.
No, he never did, which is why we're doing this. Otherwise, we wouldn't have. And it's like I made a post.
I eventually wrung a conversation out of him, but he wholesale refused to talk to you, to talk to Var, who wanted to talk to him, to talk to anyone who wanted to discuss these things. He, again, would only talk to me for some reason, because he's got this narrative of, like, I'm the only one that can be trusted. And our talk was pretty unproductive. And I haven't spoken to him since. He made this big show about, after everything, about, like, leaving the community. He was like, I regret my actions. I regret sharing this. I regret being a negative person. I think the pandemic has made me a worse person, which I get that could be a source of stress. I think the Bionicle community has made me a worse person. I I feel all these things, and I'm sorry, and this will be the last you'll see of me.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
And
again, he said that publicly instead of just talking to
he was like, yeah, TTV made me a worse person. And I'm going to be upfront.
Community. He said Bionicle community.
Did he
but
also say us?
I don't think he specifically said we made him a worse person.
Okay, I might be mistaken in that one. The bottom line is, though, what you just heard in that pseudo-apology was, it's everyone else's fault I did these things, not mine. Goodbye.
More or less.
What a scapegoat. And I'm not doing it. It sucks. It hurts. Because, we knew Keaney for so long. And it's caused us a lot of stress and a lot of hardship. And it was not, like, nothing good came of it. And now he's gone.
I just think it's masterful. It's masterful, like, in a twisted way, how he was able to weave it so well without any of us knowing, like, worming his way into, like, all the different servers and communities, ingratiating himself, riding on the TTV hype bandwagon, like the hype to hate us, rather, by being like, oh yeah, TTV does suck, they really do, but I could make it better if you believe in me. Yeah. And then doing this stuff, which may be how he truly feels, but that's even weirder because it just goes to show, I mean, again, this is the blur, right? This is the stuff you guys don't care about. This is the stuff you guys will never have any context for. This is the friend stuff. It hurts not to say they are one and the same, because the crimes of one far outweigh what Keaney did, but I feel like how I felt when Kahid and that situation happened. I feel like, did I really know this person? Did I really, like, because the Keaney I knew wouldn't have done that. The Keaney I knew, like, the Keaney I knew at least had some respect for, like, the stress we had to deal with, even if it was of our own doing. And he might not agree with it, and he might poke fun, but he wouldn't abjectly add to it. And the bit I left out, the final bit, was when he made that post. Like I said, if it was just the post, it'd be whatever. But it's the fact that he was, like, hyping the post in, like, Discords. The RSG server, the Reddit server, whatever. Hyping it up. Like, oh, this is so funny. Lol. This is a great reaction. Let's make sure it gets more likes than their actual main post. Let's rally the troops. Let's humiliate them. Haha, this is funny. Like, all this stuff. And that, to me, tells the real intention. Adding me specifically in a public server instead of replying to my messages, that speaks the intention. Refusing to talk to us privately but condemn us publicly, that speaks to the intention. And giving a faux pseudo apology in a public server and making a dramatic exit to martyr yourself in the community, that speaks to the intention. It was never about being genuine. It was never about us as friends. It was never about us as business quote-unquote partners or, like, project partners. It was all about showboating. It was about showboating publicly to get street cred, to get cool points, to get respect points, and to carve out an identity for himself that he prior didn't have. And if that's chill, like, if that's what he wants to do, that's his life. Yeah. It just hurts. It hurts from our perspective.
Yep.
And I mean, like, it's not like there aren't grains of truth. You did say that. Minus 90% of the context and knowledge of you as a person.
Yeah.
He did propose help for the contests under a very specific set of criteria that he didn't elaborate on and didn't properly pitch to you and didn't follow up on because of a preconceived notion about you. He did talk about all these issues with the contests and whatnot and try to get them changed. But he also didn't participate in any of our planning talks because he didn't want to. In his eyes, yeah, it seems like nothing really changed to suddenly make us need help. but that's because he took a self-imposed 6-month sabbatical and missed the things that made us realize we needed help. There's always a part 2. There's always a to be continued. And that's what was lacking. The message lacked any nuance whatsoever. And it was just kind of frustrating.
Yep.
And I'm sorry you had to deal with it, because it affected you more than it did me. But like it just kind of annoyed me.
I gotta say, it was really nice when like the others, like Var and Ven, found out about all this. Because I had no idea what to do when it all started blowing up. Because everyone's taking it seriously and running with things and just making all these claims and statements and so on and so forth. And it's like it's all in the terms of this contest, you know? It's like all from this contest. And Var and Ven, they went onto Twitter and just had a field day just making fun of the situation because, you know, from an outsider's perspective, it can be kind of silly.
It's very silly.
All of this springs from, you know, Lego stuff. And they really helped paint perspective on the whole matter, and that was a very, very needed moment of levity.
I appreciated it a lot.
Yeah.
It was nice, and I feel bad because people were like, "That's unprofessional. You guys should treat Keaney with more respect." I'm like, "Well, what do you want us to do, man?" We had tried to talk to him privately. It didn't work out, and so they did the next best thing, which was to like try and make us feel better and highlight the ridiculousness of it all. Var doesn't even support the contest. Like, we're not a hive mind, but he supports us as people. He supports us as friends, which is unfortunately more than I got from Keaney, and definitely more than Eljay did. Which is his call. Like, if he doesn't want to be friends with us, that's cool. But like, you could do it other ways.
Yeah,
it didn't have to be done this way.
I think ultimately, at the end of the day, the moral of the story and the lesson that we, as a group, have taken away from this, us as friends have taken away from this, and that I think the community should take away from this, is maybe don't be friends with people whose online usernames are 4 letters long, start with a K and end with an I. It just probably isn't a good idea. They're probably not gonna end things very well at the end of the day.
Bruh.
But yeah. So,
oh boy.
It was rough, but it's done. Keaney's gone. Oh well.
More or less. So, I'm going to be honest. I'm kind of tapped out. I just kind of want to give a Cliff Notes summary of the rest of it.
Yes, we should do that.
Is that okay?
Yeah, like, maybe we can do a little bit of Q&A, but it's not going to be very much.
We'll do a few.
Uh,
the Cliff Notes summary, and feel free to cut in if you have things to say. We brought in auditors to help. We brought on a list of volunteers from the message boards to help survey the entries and catch potential mistakes. And they were people who volunteered. They answered our call for help. They volunteered their time. The system was not perfect. There was some confusion about whether they were going to post or we were going to arbitrate privately and then we were going to post. And sometimes they posted before decisions had been made final. They were new to it. It wasn't properly laid out. There was a bit of a learning curve, but it was immensely helpful.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, they did a very good job, like, learning things and figuring out a system and working together and, you know, doing what they could.
That's all you can do. And it's going to be done better in the future. I think we're definitely, no matter what form the contests take, I'd like to keep some form of that system in place because having more eyes, you know, no matter who those eyes are, is ultimately a good thing. And I appreciated the help that they did and that they volunteered to do it. And they, in turn, had some stress to deal with as a result of it. But it was a big help. And I thank you to all of them.
Yeah, they did do a good job.
And past that, it went pretty smoothly.
Yeah,
you know?
And they're going to do even better in the future. I know they will. We've got a lot of work, like, framework ideas in the works, and it's going to be really good moving forward. They're going to do an even better job, and I'm very, very excited. But yeah. After that, though, they did the auditing. We looked over everything. We got the polls up. Everyone voted, and we are now here at the winner, and everyone's really happy.
It's pretty great. It wasn't my first choice, but it was up there.
It was
my second choice.
Yeah, it wasn't mine either. It was definitely also my second choice. But I like it. I've really warmed up to it. Everyone really likes it. It's very well illustrated. It's super thematic. Everyone's happy with the color changes, the masks. You know?
It took me a while to get behind Green Bamonga, and I still am not fully, but people seem to be happy with it, even if it requires lots of paint, because it has like visual identity, and you know what? That's cool. I respect that.
Paint or resin. Some people have been doing resin. I'll have to show you a video later. Meso, Duck Bricks, he did a review of the koalas, and he like 3D printed like the feet and the thigh armor and the chest armor and the shield with a metallic like a metallic plastic, and it looks great.
Oh, that's cool.
So there are ways to do it without paint. And it also goes to show the immense power of 3D printing in this day and age.
Yeah, no. That's why I didn't want to, not acknowledge that side of the community. Like, 3D printing is involved so much. Like it's so intricately woven now. The things it can do are crazy.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it paid off. And it also goes to show, like, when we say it's not our favorite. It's not like we don't like it. Obviously, it's amazing. It just goes to show, not all the time do our favorites end up winning, and that's a good thing, because they don't have to, because we're just facilitating the contests. We're not trying to get our favorites to win. We're trying to help the community pick their favorites and have a
I'm very happy with the creativity that's on display from everybody. Lots of good stuff. Kubasum, I hope that's not pronounced right. No way that is, but thank you. They did a super chat for $20. It's depressing how something meant to rejuvenate the community is bolstering so much vitriol and negativity. I've been around since the first BIONICLE autopsy, and I'll continue to support y'all through thick and thin. That was a long time ago.
No kidding. Thank you. And the lesson that we learned recently, because there's a whole nother side to this. It's a community, some other community heads tried to, take over the contests and do a poll to try and see if people didn't want us to continue them, or if people didn't want the contest to continue. It's nice that they did finally admit that the folks that have been vocally against the contests are a vocal minority. They are not a large group of people. They're just very vocal. And that the contests are popular. People do like the contests. They are a form of rejuvenation. People have been enjoying them. It's just we've run into some smaller personal issues, and that's been difficult. But
yeah,
it's
not perfect. Everything can be revised, but the ideas are good.
Yeah. I still think that they can be good. I have high hopes for the next one. But yeah, it is tiring.
Well, Trevor Samora, super chat of $50.
Oh.
Thank you so much. Definitely agree with Kuba. Thanks for keeping it up / the light alive, however you'd like to say it. Much support. Minnie, good night. Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. The last thing, like LJ mentioned, is there was a survey conducted by other community heads. Presumably, the initial correspondence has been published on maskofdestiny.com, so you can make of it what you will. My interpretation was very much, hey, meet our demands and give us the contests, or you can work with us, but you can be in like a puppet role, like they mentioned. LJ can only arbitrate the results, but he's not allowed to speak. Stuff like that. After the survey.
Sorry, Messa. Hang on. Give me a second. The collar's too tight. They're yanking on the leash. I can't talk anymore.
after the survey, I think they realized maybe like the tonality wasn't the best at wanting to foster, a discussion, because they sent a second one that was much more like reasonable. And so we did actually have like a productive talk. Funny what can happen when you approach things productively.
Yeah.
We did have a talk the other day with the folks over at Mask of Destiny, as well as a few other figures in the community. That talk's actually been recorded.
Yeah.
You can find it on YouTube.
It's online. Maybe we can link it in the description. I need timestamps for this whole thing. I feel like it'd be unfair to people to not give them timestamps, so I'm gonna try and do that.
Respect.
Maybe we'll discuss it. There's a language warning for the recording because some of the other people swore, and also some parts of it, the audio fades out sometimes. I don't know why. That was weird.
Sure.
But I didn't record it. Some people asked why it wasn't on this channel. We didn't put on the event. We didn't ask for the event. We basically had no involvement in its setup. That was all on those groups. So we left it.
I just wanted to have a talk about it. I didn't want to make it a show.
Yeah, they made it like a podcast.
They made it like a full-on podcast with like Q&A, but it was like a private podcast. You had to be part of the Discord to listen to. I wasn't really convinced that was necessary, but I've kind of since been won over to like at least the merits of doing it publicly for like transparency's sake. I kind of get it, but yeah, it wasn't our idea. That was entirely Mask of Destiny's brainchild. So as far as I was concerned, they were the people to market it and advertise it, which they didn't really deign to do anywhere other than Discord servers, which was totally fair. That's their call. It's an ongoing thing. The proposal, it's public if you want to go like find it. The idea is basically to have more community collaboration in future contests. Nothing's locked down. We don't know if anything will be. It's an ongoing thing. I don't want to use pretentious words like the negotiations are ongoing, but that's a more or less appropriate way to say it. We're going to talk to them again at some point in January, but we're going to go on like Christmas detox break.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
But
yeah,
it was more or less a good talk, and we'll see where it goes, if anywhere. But that's all I really have. That's the most recent thing.
All right. All in all, it's done. It's over. It's a bright future ahead. The Hagah look excellent.
We're going to do 5 questions. 2 from YouTube, 2 from patron chat. Go now. And we'll pick the best ones.
And then,
but I wanted to make the 5th a question that was already asked.
Okay. Do you want to do that now?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless there was something you wanted to do first.
Oh, I wanted to take the pin out of something I put a pin in earlier, but I'll let you go first.
Okay. T. Leecon asked, Knack J, do you guys personally still get any fulfillment out of these contests? I don't fault the way you've done them, but given that you're adults who do this for free, it's fair for you to decide whether you actually enjoy doing them. So, I did promise this would be the Knack and J honest hour. So I will be honest. My enjoyment is fleeting. It's diminishing at a very rapid pace. The Hagah stuff really wore me down. The vitriol, LJ made the call to leave a lot of the servers, but I'm still in them. I didn't leave. And I was basically like, well, seeing some of this stuff and seeing everything we have to do and seeing the toll, at least I feel that it's taken on the channel. I feel like our participation in the contests is directly proportional to the amount of content that's being on the channel. And it's not a wholesale thing. Obviously, life and scheduling plays a role, but I definitely feel like what little mental energy we have for Lego in our lives is going towards this, and I feel like the channel has suffered for it. So my enjoyment has been on a downward incline, but I still believe wholly in the core ethos. And when I see those winning entries, and I see the group shot, and I see the group lineup, and I see the winning artwork, and I see the cool mocks, and I see how happy people are, and I see people trying to recreate the builds, it does bring it back out. And it's like, okay, it's still there. I do still enjoy these. It just gets buried. And the question for me has been like a value assessment of like the catharsis of the results juxtaposed against the 6 to 8 months of like stress. If we can work out a better system, the answer will be yes for me, but that's very contingent on if things can be better. If they're going to be like, how they were for the bulk of the Hagah, which admittedly wasn't all the contest's fault. It was also just kind of a bad period in our lives. The answer would be no. But right now it's a big maybe. I still believe in the ethos. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, that's mostly how I feel about it. It's exhausting. It's been a trial, and there have been tribulations. It's been a drain. But I still think that it's because we get the brunt of the negativity and the brunt of, because we're listening to everyone, we see everything, and we see the vocal group that tries to make things difficult. But we have also seen the very large amount of people that do support the contest, that turned out to that poll to say, yeah, we definitely want these to continue. We do have people that support us, that give us a hand, that help us. It's there are both sides to it. I am tired.
True.
I'm very exhausted. I just want it to go better, but a lot of that has to do with people and their behavior and just acting like good people. Like, all the stress and the trouble isn't worth it. So why incur it, I still do not believe people when they say, "Oh, you've caused all this drama. You've brought this into the Bionicle community." Like, it would exist no matter what.
What I saw a comment earlier that really spoke to the core of it. It's like when you try and revive a fandom or interest in a fandom, it also includes the worst parts of it alongside the best.
Yeah, and I think that's very true. But I think I really do feel like when everything is ironed out and they can just go without issue and we have help and they're just smooth, then they can just be a relaxing, fun event for everyone to participate in. Because it's clear, like, we hear from people all the time saying, like, this is an event. It feels like a big deal. Like, it feels like something like really exciting to get involved in and be a part of. And like that's really nice and encouraging to see.
I agree. Willis asks, legit question, do you have any changes planned before the next contest? To yet? Yes.
Yeah.
To follow up what I just said, I mean, I've said as much to LJ, like, if things don't change in some capacity, my interest in participating might not be as strong as it once was, because things have to change. It's not tenable for our mental health. I don't want to complain too much because, like, oh, pity party, boo-hoo us, but, like, the proof's in the pudding. Like, whether we're qualified to handle it or not, whatever, like, we're humans and it's too much. So either it changes or they don't happen, or they don't happen as well. It's a matter of what form those changes take that we're not quite ready to commit to or lock down, but we're not rushing into two yet. So there's going to be a while, because there's multiple forms that change, quote unquote. It's a very broad term that could mean a lot of things. That could mean us continuing with the Auditor system. That could mean us working out a collaboration with the Mask of Destiny guys to take the brunt off of us. That could mean just us revising our rule infrastructure, or partnering with some other group, or doing, any number of things to help. But something is going to change. We just don't know what yet. But we're going to listen to feedback and have those talks and see where they lead, We're not ruling anything out at this stage, but we're not locking in anything either. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
So that's 2 questions down. Um, Kodiak asks on YouTube, "What's your favorite part of the contest?" I mean,
The end result.
that's the end result. It feels nice. It's cool to see.
Yeah. Definitely the end result. It is kind of a weird novelty sometimes, like when we get to the end and we like know which entry won, but we're waiting for Greg to reply to it and canonize it. It's kind of a weird feeling of like kind of an early heads up, and then wondering how people are gonna feel about it. And then when we get to see everything, it's like, okay, there we go, we made it.
Yeah.
So
The second comment is from Tiberius Codius on YouTube. It says, "Do you believe people primarily stir up drama because they care so much about the contests, or because they're bored and want something to do?"
Column A, column B, because they're two different groups.
Yeah.
One group is a malicious group that actively, and when I say group, I mean types of people, not specific groups of people.
Yeah, it's a categorization.
Yeah. So they're one type of people are malicious, and they just want to cause grief and discontent and cause problems. The other part are those that do care so much, but also are trying to push their own agendas, so that they like try and really hone in on specifics, and they try to like get us to create rules because they're specifically trying to angle toward an end result and not like let the votes decide. And like I've gotten short with these people in the past and been like, because sometimes when you in the position to moderate the contest and moderate the discussion and try and get to the core of things, it's a balance of explaining your thought process, and when the person fails to listen to the thought process, but other people are like also pitching in and being like, hey, this is what, this makes sense, you should probably heed this. It's like, okay, listen, this conversation has come to its conclusion, we have to move on. And then they continue to harp on it and harp on it and harp on it because they're trying to get an end result that they want, even though it would come at the further restriction of the creative process. We've run into that with a couple of people, and it's like, all right, no, we're stop, just stop. We're done.
It's like sometimes you can compromise,
yes,
but sometimes you can't.
Yes.
Metru build modifications were one of the points where a compromise wasn't going to happen because all the potential compromises still angered a subset of fans. The people who wanted adherence to Canon weren't going to tolerate custom builds, and they were going to say we're like contradicting Greg's words. And the mockists who wanted creative freedom, I mean, they'd be pissed off if we limited Metru builds, and they were, and people made fun of the contests for it. So like at some point, like one side was going to suffer, unfortunately.
Yeah. And just so everyone knows, the next contest, the Tuyak contest, does not have a Metru build restriction. Like, it just straight up doesn't. More or less, we're still working on some of the finer details, and we got to discuss it and deliberate it, but that's being done on the message boards right now. But really, ultimately, the restriction is going to be blue Toa with unique mask. Maybe a sword, maybe the Nui Stone. We're still working that part out.
More or less.
So,
I definitely am with you. I don't like to generalize people, because I mean, like I said, I've interacted with the Reddit servers and stuff, and even the public RSG server, and I've seen the people in there, and they're not all like toxic. There is a contingent of people who just, I mean, they're well within their right to have this opinion. They just don't like the contests. They would prefer if Bionicle lore wasn't continually being added to. We know for a fact there's people who feel like having canon appearances for characters devalues their headcanons or devalues people's mocks of those characters, which I don't agree with and I don't, get, but I respect that the belief exists.
I also don't agree with, and I also think is an issue that people bring up to try and argue against them as a whole, but that ultimately we don't see in practice, because I've seen people responding to the Haga and being like, yeah, I think my headcanon is that Bomanga has a different mask. My headcanon is that Koalas doesn't have a scarf. Like, people are already applying headcanons to these things, which is the point. And they're also, like, they're more than welcome to ignore them entirely, because headcanons are ultimately laid out in their name. They're canon that is in your head to you.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Which is intrinsically a Lego-like thing. It's creativity, freedom. I don't view it's just how I interpret Bionicle. I just don't get how having facts and having appearances and having like things, that's what separates Bionicle from like City. It's the fact that it has a story, but it's also a Lego property. You can still have that creativity and, doing your own thing. But my point is basically just like, I don't want to call everyone, not everyone's in it for the drama. There is a contingent of people that are. But there's also people who just legitimately don't like how they've been handled or don't like that they exist. And it's a matter of what they do next that determines, what group they fall into, if they do fall into a group. Because a lot of people, they don't support how we're doing them. They don't like the contest. They don't want to engage. So they just don't engage.
Yeah.
And that's how you do it. Because ultimately that's your right as a community member, and no one has to engage. But they don't make our lives a living hell trying to deal with it. And then there's those that do.
Yeah. And like Sakota even pointed out here, the Canon Helrix has inspired a lot of mocks already. And yeah, I've seen them. Like, there was a community project that Cyanova, I believe, was a part of. And I don't know if he, like, ran it, but it was like a group collaboration of a bunch of mockists making their own Helrixes. Sakota was even a part of it, I think. And that was so cool to see. I'm not going to make the claim that those mocks wouldn't have existed, without the contest. That's, I feel like I don't have the knowledge to say that, or the foresight.
Prompt.
But it was a prompt, and it gave a basis, and it generated a lot of creativity and a lot of different designs and a lot, like, so much. And the contests always do. And I think they can go better, but, there needs to be a lot more good faith and collaboration involved.
For sure. Then the last two comments on the Discord server. Actually, I think it's just one. Dark Talk Nuva asks, "Who's your favorite out of the winning Haga?"
I'm gonna default to Pooks. I like Pooks a lot.
Pooks is good. I'm a Koalas fan. I really like how Koalas came together, and I like what Subpar did with the scarf for two reasons. Number one, any Bionicle set that has a fabric piece automatically like the worst mask designs, but it looks really cool with its mouth covered. So you know what? I'm a fan of that. I'll do one more. This guy asked a legitimate question. Because Greg's stance on the Anika and Mari Kanohi seem to be that they're the same as the standards, but that doesn't necessarily rule out variant Kanohi, referring to 3D modeled variants. The official Greg stated canon seems to be that Nadiki's Vol attack is the same as Nuparu's / Mizika's. Do you think the same ruling will be applied to Chiara and the other yesterday quest Toa?
Unless Greg says one way or another publicly, because I don't think we're going to ask him about it. Like, we'll try and ask him questions still where they are, pertinent, but, the nitty-gritty details like that, probably not. So
you guys are welcome to utilize the Ask Greg forum. He does still reply there.
He does. He's still around. So I would ask him, and we'll go by whatever he says. But if we don't get an answer before the Chiara contest, I don't think that restriction will be applied. Because I think we're going to end up chalking it up to like a regional variant.
More or less.
So
I'm sorry to end it, guys. I know there's more questions, but I've been going. This is like the longest Neck and Jay ever.
Yeah, it's like almost 4 hours long.
Yeah, let's thank you to the super chats. We have Evershadow7. It says, glad y'all are still alive. Merry Christmas. Love you guys.
Thank you.
$5. Thank you. Michael Mason, $2. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Dieback says, happy holidays, guys. Take a break and recover. $5.
Thank you. And
thank you.
definitely going to.
Yep. No point in all this should you take from us the opinion that we are flawless. We are not. And I like the discussions that we have with people, no matter the venue, when people are like actually willing to talk to us. I feel like we can get stuff done that way, and it helps to bridge gaps. And if there's one thing you can take from all this mess, is that when that doesn't happen, and when communication doesn't happen, or it happens in like weird, inappropriate, or like callous ways, that's how you can really get divides that are hard to come back from.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you want like the TTV Christmas moral, even though this is like 5 days before Christmas,
love each other,
like,
everyone.
more or less, yeah, just like be cool, be chill, be willing to talk, and just treat people with respect. We're all human. We can all have short tempers occasionally. LJ over here, prime example. But we all do our best at the end of the day, and it's all a matter of living and learning. And don't be Keaney. That's basically all I have to say. Don't be a Keaney. But thank you all for listening. I greatly appreciate all of you, and we will hopefully see you very soon for more fun content that isn't 4-hour-long therapy vent sessions. LJ, give us some closing plugs.
All right. Once again, thank you all. Oh, wait, sorry. I forgot that pin that I took out.
Yeah, say that.
Yeah, somebody had mentioned earlier that they reckoned Perp's entry in the free-for-all could have very well swept the contests if there wasn't going to be a follow-up art round to it. I admittedly, and I'm going to go ahead and put it up on screen, this was entered in the first part of the Hagah contest by Perpetual, who's the winner of the Artaka art contest. It's a very, very good entry. It's very well illustrated. It's well...
It's freaking cool.
It
looks cool.
Well, not well framed isn't what well composed. There we go. It's very well composed.
It's incredibly well composed. It's a freaking elaborate painting.
I don't know how well it would have done without another art contest. I simply don't. All of his iterations made it into the final voting for the first part, but the detail on a couple of these characters were either obscured or hard to make out. So, and that was a common response and critique of it. But just to say, I don't know, but I also think it was very well done. Just probably would have been very good to hold on to that for the actual art portion. And I think
it would have been cool to see individual like portraits.
Yeah. So,
I think that was a thing with the mock and the art divide, right? To compete with mocks and the level of detail you can get from mock photos, you really need like clear views of the characters in the art.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
but it still came like this was like in the runners up. It was very close to making it through.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to see that like interplay between mocks and art.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I just wanted to actually address that before someone like left a comment like, "Hey, what was that pin you took out?" That was it. So, okay.
Well done.
We're done. Thank you all so very much for watching. We do appreciate it, and hopefully you had a good time. So once again, thank you all so much. If you're interested in joining in the conversation, head on over to the TTV message boards at board.ttvchannel.com. You need to be 13 years or older, agree to the terms of service, and follow the rules, and you'll have a good time. Thank you so much. And if you're interested in supporting the channel further, head on over to patreon.com/theTTVchannel. For as low as $1 a month, you can join the TTV Patreon Discord server, as well as the Minecraft servers on the island of Matanui and Voyanui, with hopefully in the future more to come. Finally, head on over to Twitter at the TTV channel, at Mesnack, and at the LJ Johnson, JOHNSEN.
You're so right.
Thank you.
Can you cue up Christmas dubstep as our outro?
Nope. I only have.
What if I say, please? Thank you all for listening. I'm Meso.
I'm LJ.
And streaming to you from a golden beach. This was Knack and Jay. Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.